Hey guys, tonight we're going to drift back nearly a million years to a time when humanity was on the edge of vanishing forever. Imagine this today. There are over 8 billion of us, filling cities, farms, mountains, and deserts. But if you stepped onto the earth 900,000 years ago, you wouldn't have seen bustling tribes or endless camps. You would have seen silence, emptiness, and fewer than 1/300 humans clinging to life. Not 1.3 million, not even 130,000, just 280 fragile ancestors. That's smaller than the student body of a single high school. Here's the reality check. You wouldn't survive a night. The climate had turned merciless. Ice sheets swallowed continents, oceans dropped hundreds of feet, and Africa dried into dust. Food disappeared, water vanished, and most of our species blinked out like dying stars. Somehow, against every odd, a tiny band endured. For over 117,000 years, their survival written into the very code of our DNA. You carry their struggle within you, even now. Before we begin, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy these sleepy journeys into history. And please drop your location and local time in the comments. We're weaving together a gentle map of listeners across the world. Now, let's drift together into the story of humanity's near extinction. Fragile, astonishing, unforgettable. You live in a world of more than 8 billion people. Everywhere you look, humanity dominates cities, farms, mountains, deserts. You send rockets to Mars. You create the internet. You stand at the top of the food chain. But if you had looked around 900,000 years ago, your view would have been terrifyingly different. You wouldn't see billions. You wouldn't even see millions. You would count perhaps 1 plus 280 of your kind left alive across the planet. Not 1.28 million, not 128,000, just 1 plus 280 breeding individuals. That's it. You, your kin, and barely more than 1,000 others carrying the entire weight of the species. Imagine that thin thread stretched so tight it feels impossible that you're here today. Here's the unsettling part. You almost didn't make it. Your entire lineage was hanging by a thread, and the thread held for 117,000 years. Day after day, generation after generation, you lived on the knife's edge of extinction. And the strangest part, you had no idea how close you were to being erased. Nobody did until scientists in 2023 uncovered the truth written in your DNA. Think about your body for a moment. Every cell you carry holds the record of this ordeal. Chimpanzees scattered into small groups across Africa still hold more genetic diversity than all 8 billion humans alive today. That isn't normal. That is the mark of a bottleneck. When populations shrink to almost nothing, diversity collapses. For years, nobody knew how bad it had been. But then in a lab at the Chinese Academy of Sciences, a man named Wang Ju started tracing mutations in the genomes of thousands of people. He followed them backward through time like a molecular clock, and suddenly the picture collapsed. You can imagine what he saw in the data, a bright canvas of genetic variety dimming until nearly all the colors vanish. Around 930,000 years ago, almost everyone disappeared. The models screamed catastrophe. At first, you'd think it had to be a mistake. But every time Wang Ju checked the same answer, appeared 98.7% of your ancestors were gone. The survivors, your ancestors, numbered fewer than the students in a small school. You have to pause to let that sink in. Fewer than 1/300 individuals carried the human story for 117,000 years. Most species that fall so low never recover. Biologists call it the extinction vortex, a spiral of inbreeding vulnerability and random disaster that usually ends in silence. But somehow, against the odds, you did not vanish. You endured. Now, imagine the earth you inhabit at that time. You don't see skyscrapers or farmland. You see a planet unraveling. Glaciers expand across continents. Sea levels plummet. The oceans chill. In Africa, where you wander, lush woodland shrivels into harsh, dry scrubland. Waterholes vanish. Rivers retreat. The animals you depend on starve or migrate beyond reach. Plant foods dwindle. It doesn't last a season. It doesn't last a century. It lasts thousands upon thousands of years. You can feel it in your bones. Each morning, you wake up to less than the day before. Your children search for insects because larger prey is gone. You chew bitter roots and hope they aren't poisonous. You drink from streams that may not flow again next year. And every night you wonder if tomorrow your band will simply scatter, never to meet again. This is what scientists later call a perfect storm for extinction. Yet somehow you survive. Somewhere in Africa, maybe near a persistent water source, maybe in a hidden valley, your people cling to life. You don't know why this spot works when others fail, but it does. And in this narrow refuge, the course of humanity twists in extraordinary ways. In your cells, something unprecedented occurs. Two chromosomes fuse into one. You had once carried 48 like chimpanzees and gorillas. Suddenly, you carry 40. Chromosome 2, the mark every one of your descendants will inherit, is born. Scientists in the far future will point to the scars where two ancient chromosomes merged the forensic evidence of a change that reshaped your species. And because you are so few, that change spreads rapidly. Within a handful of generations, everyone carries it. Everyone alive today, including you, still does. This wasn't just a quirk of biology. Near the fusion site are genes tied to neural development. Some researchers will suggest that this accident nudged your brain toward complexity, maybe even set the stage for the intelligence that now defines you. Imagine that. Art, music, language, rockets, skyscrapers. All of it may trace back to the moment your population was so small that a single mutation could take root in every survivor. But your survival isn't only written in chromosomes, it's etched in the absence of bones. Between 950,000 and 650,000 years ago, the fossil record is almost empty. Scientists will later call this the fossil gap. They'll puzzle over why so few remains exist. But you know why there are barely any of you to leave fossils at all. Your existence is too thin, too fragile to leave many traces. Still, you persist. Your days are marked by water, food, and fire. Fire especially becomes the difference between life and death. Cooking makes poisonous roots edible, makes meat safer, stretches your scarce calories. Fire lights your night ward's predators and lengthens your days. Around 800,000 years ago, evidence of fire use spikes, and it's no coincidence. It marks the moment your kind began to climb out of the bottleneck. From this fragile foothold, everything begins again. You multiply, you spread, And eventually, you divide into three great lineages: modern humans, Neanderthals, and Denisovans. But right now, in the middle of the crisis, you don't know that future. You only know that survival today is uncertain. The horizon looks empty, and yet against reason you keep going. You feel the dryness in your throat before you even open your eyes fully. Water is the currency of survival. Without it, every plan collapses. You know instinctively that today, like yesterday, the search begins again. Someone in your band remembers a rocky outcrop a day's walk away where trickles still flowed last season. Whether it still flows is another question. The memory itself is precious. Your people survive because memory survives. Every time someone dies before passing on knowledge, your chances shrink. This is why your group is obsessed with teaching. Children don't just play. They watch, they imitate, they memorize. They have to. In a population so small, there is no room for error. If a child forgets which plant root must be roasted for hours before it can be eaten safely, the mistake could poison not just themselves, but everyone who shares the meal. Knowledge is fragile, and you treat it with the care of fire. Future scientists will read this fragility in your DNA. They will see the loss of 65 of your genetic diversity during this era, a staggering collapse compared to any other species. They will compare it to the founder effect when humans left Africa 60,000 years ago, a mere 15-foot reduction in diversity, and realize how extraordinary your struggle was. But for you, the reality is far more immediate. More sickness, more birth defects, more infant deaths. You don't know the word inbreeding, but you know its cost. Some children are born too weak to survive. Others fail to grow. You grieve, but you cannot stop. Every face you see in the morning firelight matters because each one carries a fraction of humanity's future. You don't think in terms of billions, but in terms of whether there will be anyone left at all. And still, somehow, you keep going. The world around you is shifting, not in sudden disasters, but in relentless pressure. Imagine watching the rivers retreat season after season. Imagine seeing the trees vanish, replaced by grass, then sand. This is what climate change means for you. Not a concept, but the ground literally cracking beneath your feet. Scientists in the far future will give it names: the mid-Pleistocene transition, a planetary shift in ice age cycles. But for you, it's hunger, it's thirst, it's emptiness. You wander across landscapes that once teemed with animals. Antelope herds dwindle until they vanish entirely. Elephants shrink in number. The great predators disappear, not because you hunted them, but because the prey they depended on is gone. The silence is haunting. Nights that used to echo with animal calls become eerily still. You realize that even scavenging is harder. Now there are fewer carcasses left behind because fewer animals remain to die. And so you adapt. You eat insects, termites, crickets, beetle larvae. They're abundant enough to scrape together calories, though they never feel like enough. You dig tubers hard and bitter, roasting them in fire to release the nutrients locked inside. You raid nests for eggs, timing your raids to avoid destroying future breeding. You learn which seasons bring which plants. Your stomach aches most days, but the knowledge that you can make it through another night keeps you moving. Fire becomes your lifeline. When you cook meat, you destroy parasites. When you roast roots, you unlock sugars that raw digestion cannot reach. Every ember is guarded like treasure. At night, you huddle close, not just for warmth, but for safety. Predators fear the flames, and with fire, your day extends into the night. You can shape tools, repair shelters, whisper stories. In those whispers lies your continuity. This is how cooperation becomes more than kindness. It becomes law. If you hoard food, the group weakens. If you fight, the group fractures. And when numbers are this low, fracture means extinction. So you share. You resolve disputes quickly. You care for the injured instead of abandoning them, because you cannot afford to lose even one capable adult. Social bonds keep you alive as much as water and fire do. Generations later, scientists will marvel at this. They will argue that it was in these desperate times that your species honed its social intelligence. Living in groups so small, you became experts at reading each other, predicting intentions, cooperating even under stress. Some will call it the birthplace of theory of mind, the ability to recognize the thoughts and feelings of others. You don't name it, but you live it. Every glance, every gesture, every shared memory is a matter of survival. The days blur into years. The years blur into centuries. You don't count them, but they stretch into what will later be measured as 117,000 years of near extinction. Try to imagine that not just one lifetime or 10, but thousands upon thousands of generations living on the edge. If your kind had been just a little less adaptable, just a little less cooperative, you wouldn't be here. And then slowly, something changes. The climate eases, not completely, but enough. Rain falls more reliably in certain places. Grasslands return. Animal herds recover. Archaeologists thousands of years later will note that around 800,000 years ago, the use of fire suddenly increases across sites. That timing is no coincidence. It marks the moment when your people begin to emerge from the bottleneck, when survival turns into expansion. But you don't know that yet. All you know is that for the first time in generations, the horizon feels less empty. For the first time, you see herds gathering again. You feel hope, though you don't have a word for it. And through it all, in your DNA, the fusion of two chromosomes spreads until it defines you. This fragile accident, carried by your tiny group, becomes universal. It will shape every human who comes after. In this, your suffering is not just endurance, it is transformation. You are not the same as those who lived before the bottleneck. You are the survivors, the chosen by circumstance, and you are carrying humanity into its future. You move with your band across a land that feels increasingly hostile. The ground beneath your bare feet is cracked, the air shimmering with heat, even though the sun has only begun to rise. Every step reminds you of the precariousness of your existence. Behind you, the fire pit still glows faintly, its coals buried under ash, to preserve Thessalim for tonight. You never leave fire behind completely. You can't risk it. Starting fire from nothing is a miracle your people haven't fully mastered, and without those embers, survival becomes far less certain. As you walk, you notice the silence again. Once this landscape might have roared with life, the trumpeting of elephants, the low rumble of predators, the steady hum of insects in thick forests. Now it feels empty. Even the wind carries only dust. When you do hear something, a distant cry of a bird, the scuttle of a lizard. It feels startling, almost alien. You've grown used to absence. Future archaeologists will dig into these soils and find almost nothing of you or your kin. They will name this void the fossil gap, puzzled for decades about why so few bones remain from this period. But you know why. Your people are too few, spread too thin across a hostile continent. The chance of one of you dying in the rare conditions needed to preserve a fossil is minuscule. Your existence is too fragile to leave much evidence. Yet evidence exists inside you. In the microscopic patterns of your DNA lies the proof of survival. Two chromosomes, once separate, have fused into one. Chromosome 2 becomes the scar you will pass to all future humans. You don't feel this change, but its consequences ripple quietly through every generation. In such a small population, unusual mutations spread quickly. What might have been a rare anomaly in a larger group becomes universal here, and some scientists in the far future will argue that this fusion may have nudged your brain toward new complexity. Perhaps even now, deep in your mind, you are beginning to think in ways no ancestor did before. The thought doesn't comfort you when your stomach growls. Hunger is constant. Food is never guaranteed. The insects you find scurrying under rocks, the grubs dug from rotting logs, the occasional root roasted in fire, these are the staples of your diet. Once in a while, your group gets lucky. You find a weakened antelope or a zebra trapped in mud. When that happens, you feast. For a few days, everyone eats until full. Children laugh, the sick grow stronger. But feasts are rare, and starvation is never far away. Imagine how this scarcity shapes your body. You are lean, wiry, built for endurance more than strength. You carry scars on your arms and legs, from accidents with stone tools, from scrambles across jagged rocks, from encounters with animals that didn't end cleanly. You heal if you can, but infections are constant. Sometimes wounds fester, sometimes they kill. In such moments, your group must decide whether to carry the sick or leave them behind. And most of the time, you carry them. Numbers are too precious to abandon. This instinct to hold together at all costs is what saves you. Cooperation is not optional, it is survival. When one of you finds water, all of you drink. When one discovers a way to prepare a bitter root safely, the knowledge spreads instantly. Teaching becomes instinctive, almost compulsive. You show children how to recognize tracks, which insects to eat, how to chip stone into blades. You don't wait for them to figure it out by trial and error. There's no time for that. Mistakes can be deadly, so knowledge must flow like water from generation to generation. This is why in the far future, scientists will say that the bottleneck shaped not only your bodies, but your minds. Living for over 100,000 years in such precarious conditions, selected for the traits that made you human: intelligence, adaptability, communication. Individuals who could share knowledge, who could teach, who could cooperate. Those were the ones who lived long enough to reproduce. Those who could not vanished, their lineages erased in silence. Over time, the survivors became more skilled, more social, more ingenious. But you don't see yourself as ingenious. You see yourself as barely surviving. Every morning is a struggle to endure the day, and every evening is a relief that you are still alive. Your world is measured in sips of water, in bites of roasted root, in the safety of firelight. Progress is not something you think about. To you, there is no progress, only persistence. When you find a patch of edible plants, your group treats it like treasure. Roots are dug carefully, leaving enough behind to regrow. Tubers are roasted slowly in fire, releasing their starches. Bitter leaves are boiled until they can be swallowed without sickness. You learn which plants store best, which spoil quickly, which must be eaten immediately. This knowledge is as vital as your tools, and you guard it fiercely. Stone tools themselves are evolving. Where your ancestors once chipped rocks into crude choppers, you now shape them with more precision. You strike flakes from cores, deliberately aiming for sharp edges. Sometimes you haft them onto wooden shafts with sinew and resin, creating simple spears. These tools make hunting possible, though never easy. They make butchering carcasses faster, digging more efficient, cutting hides for clothing more practical. Future archaeologists will see these tools and marvel at their standardization, but for you, they are simply lifelines. Evenings are when you feel most human. As darkness falls, your band gathers close around fire. The flames dance, shadows flicker across faces. You hear stories, memories of past seasons, lessons about which streams lasted longest, warnings about plants that can kill. Children listen intently, eyes wide, memorizing every word. This is how your knowledge persists. You don't have writing. You don't even have language, as the future will know it not yet. But you have communication rich enough to pass along what matters. In these stories, in these whispers around the fire, you preserve your species. And while you don't know it, you are shaping your mind in extraordinary ways. Storytelling forces you to imagine what others think, to remember details, to plan for futures you may never see. Each time you share knowledge, your brain strengthens pathways that make more complex thought possible. Centuries later, this will give rise to true language, to symbolic thinking, to culture. But tonight, it is simply survival. Your nights are filled with fear as well as hope. Predators still roam, though fewer than before. Hyenas prowl the edges of firelight. Lions sometimes roar in the distance. You sleep lightly, ears attuned to every sound, ready to stir if danger approaches. Fire deters most threats, but not all. Some nights, predators grow bold. When that happens, you raise spears, throw stones, shout into the dark. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Every lost life feels like a crushing blow because each person is irreplaceable. Day after day, year after year, you endure. You don't realize that you are living through one of the longest near-death experiences any species has ever faced. 117,000 years of survival on the edge. Most bottlenecks last only a few generations, caused by disasters like volcanic eruptions or disease outbreaks. But yours stretches across millennia. That longevity is what makes your survival so astonishing. Eventually, slowly, things change. Around 813,000 years ago, the climate begins to stabilize, at least somewhat. Rain falls more regularly in some regions. Rivers flow again. Grasslands spread. Herds of animals return. Your population, so long pressed to the brink, begins to grow. You don't see it as numbers. You see it in the laughter of more children, in the strength of more hunters, in the abundance of more food. Life feels slightly less desperate. For the first time in countless generations, you dare to imagine tomorrow as something more than repetition. This is the turning point. From this fragile recovery, your descendants will eventually split into three great lineages: the Neanderthals, the Denisovans, and the modern humans, who will one day number in billions. But in this moment, you don't know any of that. You only know the warmth of fire, the taste of roasted roots, the feel of water on your tongue after a long search. You know that against all odds, you are still here. And somehow, impossibly, that is enough. You watch the sun dip low as evening creeps across the barren horizon. The heat of the day fades into a sharp chill, and you pull the rough hide tighter around your shoulders. The band begins to gather again slowly as stragglers return from searching for roots, insects, or the rare trace of animal life. Some return with food, others empty handed, all of you weary. But no matter what, you circle the fire. The flames crackle, throwing light across hollowed faces, glinting in tired eyes. Tonight feels no different than thousands of nights before, yet every night you endure is another small victory. The fire itself has become more than heat or light. It is the heartbeat of your people. Around it you eat, you whisper, you teach. Around it, you remember the water source that still flows, the plant that can poison, if prepared wrongly, the predator that lurks nearby. In the firelight, memory becomes survival. If you could step outside yourself and look with the knowledge of future science, you would see that these nights are shaping your species forever. They refine your instincts to share, to cooperate, to learn. They carve pathways in your brain that make language possible, that nurture intelligence, that give rise to the very traits that will one day set you apart from all other creatures. But in the moment, you don't see destiny, you see survival. You lie down near the embers, listening to the murmurs of your kin. The ground is cold, hard, unforgiving. You press closer to the warmth, closer to the people who carry your fragile lineage forward. As your eyes close, the thought is always the same. Tomorrow will demand the same struggle. Find water, find food, keep fire alive, protect each other, endure. And yet beneath that constant weight, there is something else, something quiet but undeniable. It is the knowledge buried deep in the instinct that your people have survived another day when they should not have. That in a world collapsing under ice and drought, you are still here. You don't know that one day there will be billions like you, scattered across continents, building cities that glow like galaxies. You only know that for tonight, the fire still burns, the band still breathes, and hope, though fragile, remains. You are one of the 1 to 80, and because you keep going, the human story will not end here. You wake each morning to a world that feels harsher than the last. The sun burns down on empty scrubland, the air dry, carrying dust more than moisture. You remember when elders spoke of forests where rivers ran year round, but you have never seen such abundance. Your entire life has been shaped by scarcity. If you could look at Earth from above, you'd see the reason the planet's rhythm has changed. For millions of years, ice ages followed a steady 41,000-year pattern. The cold would come, ice sheets would grow, then warmth would return. Harsh, yes, but predictable. Life adapted to that cycle. Oh, but around 900,000 years ago, everything shifted. The mid-Pleistocene transition stretched these cycles to brutal spans of 100,000 years. Imagine what that means for you. Ice sheets grow larger than ever before, locking up vast amounts of water. Sea levels fall by hundreds of feet, Whole coastlines vanish, exposing bare land. Ocean currents shift, temperatures plummet. But you don't see glaciers or coastlines. You see Africa drying into dust. The rains that once nourished woodlands fail, replaced by erratic storms or no storms at all. Streams dry, rivers shrink, lakes evaporate into cracked basins. Your home becomes what scientists will later call aridification, not just dry, but catastrophically dry. You feel it in your cracked lips, in the weakness of your children, in the desperate migrations of your band. Every year, the search for water becomes harder. You learn to read the land for subtle signs, the green patch that marks underground springs, the flight of birds that signals water nearby, the faint tracks of animals heading toward a hidden pool. Miss the signs, and you die. The animals you once relied on vanish one by one. Antelope herds shrink until only stragglers remain. Elephants disappear. Even the great predators grow scarce, not because you killed them, but because their prey is gone. Nights that once echoed with life now fall silent. The silence itself frightens you. Without animals, there is no food. Even scavenging fails when there are no carcasses left to find. Future scientists will call this a perfect storm for extinction, a combination of climate chaos and ecological collapse. But for you, it's simply daily life. You rise with hunger and sleep with hunger. You follow your band across barren landscapes, carrying children too weak to walk, hoping to find a patch of green, a burrow of amex, a dying animal. Each day feels like a gamble, and each victory, a mouthful of food, a sip of water, feels impossibly small. The skies taunt you with their unpredictability. One season, heavy rains flood the land, washing away shelters, drowning animals. The next, nothing falls for years, leaving the earth cracked and lifeless. You can't plan, you can only endure. And endurance becomes the only true skill your people possess. It's not just hunger that stalks you, it's the randomness of disaster. In a population so small, a single drought can wipe out entire bands. A disease carried by tainted water can kill half your group in weeks. A fire sweeping across dry grass can erase every shelter you've built. There are no backups, no distant relatives to help. When one group vanishes, its knowledge vanishes with it. Still, you cling to life. Fire helps, but fire doesn't make rain. Cooperation helps, but cooperation doesn't conjure herds out of empty plains. Each season, you adapt again, moving farther, eating stranger foods, digging deeper into the ground for roots and water. And with every adaptation, your body and mind sharpen in ways that will echo across millennia. Future archaeologists will marvel at how this crisis reshaped your kind. They'll see the loss of so many species in the fossil record, the sudden dominance of arid landscapes, the gap where human remains should be but aren't. They'll know that most of your kin did not survive. Only a sliver did your band, and others like it, clinging to patches of stability. They will call it a bottleneck, but to you, it's simply survival. You don't know words like extinction vortex, but you live in its shadow. Populations this small usually die. Genetic diversity collapses. Inbreeding rises, vulnerability compounds. A bad season here, an epidemic there, and you're gone. Most species that fall into such a spiral never climb back. Yet somehow you keep going, Somehow, you find the cracks in the storm where life still breathes. You think about the future only in the smallest ways. Will there be food tomorrow? Will the spring still flow next season? You can't imagine thousands of years ahead, but unknowingly, every choice you make, every well you dig, every root you roast, every ember you keep alive is shaping the fate of billions yet unborn. Your world is cruel, but it is also formative. In its pressure, it forges something new. Hunger makes you creative. Drought makes you cooperative. Disaster makes you resilient. The mid Pleistocene transition is not just a catastrophe, it is the crucible in which humanity is remade. And you wandering across a parched land are the metal being hammered into shape. You press forward across the cracked earth dust, rising with every step. The band walks in silence, each of you saving energy, each conserving breath. Talking wastes moisture. Even breathing feels like a burden when the air is so dry it scratches your throat raw. You don't measure time in days or weeks, but in the distance between water holes. When the last one dries, you move. And when there is nowhere left to move, you fear the end has come. In truth, the end has already come for most of your kind. Entire populations vanish without a trace. In regions where water once flowed, nothing remains but bones, animals, too weak to escape. You, and the few who remain, are survivors only because you happen to be in the right places at the right times. Pockets of land small, rare, fragile refuges are the only reason your species still breathes. Perhaps it's a mountain valley catching extra rainfall. Perhaps an underground aquifer feeding a stubborn spring. Perhaps a strip of forest clinging to moisture while everything else dries. Whatever the reason you cling to these lifelines as though they were destiny, the irony is that you don't realize the scale of the collapse. You don't know that there were once far more of you scattered across continents. You only know the emptiness of the land, the scarcity of voices around the fire, the aching sense that your world is shrinking. In truth, humanity has shrunk to fewer than 300 breeding individuals, a number smaller than a single modern village. You don't count numbers, but you feel the fragility in every cough, every limp, every hollow stomach. And yet the pressure carves you into something new. Starvation forces you to expand your diet. You eat termites by the handful, crushing their earthy taste between your teeth. You dig into rotting logs for grubs rich with protein, though slimy, on your tongue. You scavenge bones left by predators, cracking them open for marrow. You learn to roast poisonous roots until they're safe. You forage berries, cautiously tasting small amounts to test whether they sicken you. Each bite is an experiment, and mistakes cost lives. But over generations, your people refine the knowledge into tradition. The danger becomes wisdom, and the wisdom becomes survival. Future scientists will marvel at this transformation. They will argue that the bottleneck turned you into dietary generalists, creatures willing and able to eat almost anything. They will say that this flexibility was the key to your eventual dominance, the reason your descendants will thrive in deserts, tundras, forests, and coastlines across the world. But for you, it isn't strategy, it's desperation. You eat what you must, because otherwise you die. Water remains your obsession. Some of you learn to dig crude wells in dry riverbeds, scraping down until mud begins to glisten. You carry water in hollowed gourds or animal bladders, treasuring every drop. You learn to recognize subtle clues, The green of certain plants, the calls of birds at dusk, the faint dampness of soil beneath a shaded rock. This knowledge is sacred. Entire generations depend on the accuracy of such memories. If one elder dies without passing it on, the loss can doom a whole band. The climate itself seems to conspire against you. Ice sheets in the far north grow massive, holding so much water that sea levels fall dramatically. The Mediterranean shrinks into smaller seas. Land bridges appear between continents, but you don't see them. You only see the droughts that ripple outward from those frozen giants. The altered circulation of air and ocean robs Africa of its lifeblood. The monsoons weaken, becoming unreliable. Where once the rains were steady, now they arrive late or not at all. Your world lurches from flood to famine with no middle ground. Animals suffer first. Grasslands vanish, and with them the grazers. Antelope species that thrived for millions of years simply vanish. Elephant herds dwindle until they disappear. The big predators follow, starved by the loss of prey. Fossil records will one day confirm this mass extinction, but you experience it directly. Every season, fewer animals remain to hunt. Every track in the dirt feels like a miracle, every successful kill like a feast. More often, you return empty-handed, stomach gnawing, children crying from hunger. You adapt socially as well as physically. In a world where every life matters, you cannot afford endless conflict. Disputes are settled quickly. Resources are shared even when scarce. The injured are supported because leaving them weakens the whole. Cooperation isn't noble, it's necessary. Your people become skilled at reading each other's emotions, anticipating moods, calming anger before it becomes violence. This instinct will one day grow into diplomacy, into culture, into societies far larger than yours. But tonight, it's just the reason your group hasn't fractured. The nights test you most. Firelight keeps away predators, but the darkness beyond still terrifies you. The roar of a lion, the cackle of hyenas, the hiss of snakes, they remind you that you are not alone. Yet even predators grow fewer. Their silence is more frightening than their presence. If they vanish, it means the ecosystem is unraveling completely. And if it unravels too far, you vanish too. The scale of time is beyond your comprehension. You live years, at most decades, if lucky. But the crisis stretches across 117,000 years. Imagine that generation after generation, born into scarcity, living their entire lives without knowing abundance, passing on only the skills of survival. For scientists in the far future, this length will be what makes your bottleneck so astonishing. Most population crashes are brief, caused by sudden events like volcanic eruptions or plagues. Yours is prolonged, grinding, relentless. It isn't a catastrophe, it's an era, and yet within that crucible, change accelerates. With so few of you, evolution itself speeds up. Mutations spread quickly, whether beneficial or harmful. Those that help survival, sharper minds, stronger cooperation, better adaptability, become common in a handful of generations. Those that hinder survival vanish almost as quickly, because in a population, this small failure leaves no descendants. You are living in an evolutionary pressure cooker, where every trait is tested ruthlessly, and only the strongest, smartest, most adaptable persist. It's easy to imagine your world as hopeless, and in truth, it nearly was. You lived on the edge of extinction, closer to vanishing than to thriving. But hope flickered still. Somewhere in a hidden valley or near a stubborn lake, your ancestors held on. They taught, they cooperated, they adapted. They endured long enough for the climate to shift again, long enough for rainfall to return, long enough for populations to expand once more. When the rains finally came, you could not have known what it meant. You only knew that the rivers flowed again, that animals returned, that hunger loosened its grip. But those changes marked the end of the bottleneck. From that fragile recovery, your descendants would grow divide and eventually spread across the world. You don't know it, but you are living through the crucible that will define humanity forever. Without this collapse, without this near extinction, you might never have become who you are. The droughts, the hunger, the silence, they aren't just suffering. They are the furnace in which humanity is forged. You wake one morning to the sound of coughing. A child sits near the fire, thin ribs heaving face, drawn with exhaustion. The band gathers around concern etched in every glance. You all know the danger. In groups as small as yours, the loss of even one life weighs heavily. But when sickness strikes, it doesn't stop with one. Illness can spread like viscera in dry grass, sweeping through the entire band. Sometimes it leaves only corpses. This fragility is part of your daily existence. In a world where your numbers are so low, chance itself becomes a predator. A river that runs dry too soon, a lightning storm that sparks a wildfire, a disease that sweeps through the camp. Any of these can erase your lineage entirely. This is what modern biologists will call the extinction vortex, the spiral from which few species escape once their numbers fall so far. You don't name it, but you live inside it every day. The climate never stops pressing against you. The great ice sheets far to the north hold the earth in their grip, reshaping air currents, twisting weather patterns into chaos. Africa's rains falter again and again. Some years storms come with such violence, they strip away soil and drown shelters. Other years, the sky remains empty for seasons, baking the land into stone. There is no rhythm, no pattern you can rely on. What once was predictable has become erratic, merciless. You look around and notice what is missing. The great herds of antelope gone, the elephants gone. Even predators grow rare. Where once you feared lions, now you fear their silence more. The absence of animals means hunger, but it also means loneliness. The land itself feels abandoned. You walk for days without hearing more than the whisper of wind through grass. Each footstep echoes in emptiness. Still you adapt. You always adapt. When large game vanishes, you turn to smaller animals. Birds, reptiles, rodents, anything that can be caught becomes food. Insects despised by your ancestors now sustain you. Termite mounds are broken open and consumed greedily. Grubs dug from rotten wood become delicacies of survival. Roots and tubers fill your stomach, though they taste of bitterness and ash. Fire transforms them into something edible, something that keeps you alive for another day. This necessity forces innovation. You learn to sharpen stone more carefully, to make tools that cut deeper, dig faster, pierce harder. You learn to plan hunts around the patterns of the few animals that remain. You follow herds with patience, tracking them across vast distances, knowing that failure means starvation. You teach these skills relentlessly to children drilling into them. The knowledge of plants tracks seasons. Knowledge becomes the only inheritance worth passing on. At night, when you sit by the fire, you notice something else emerging. You and your kin share more than just instructions. You share memories, warnings, stories. You imagine the thoughts of others, anticipate their needs, comfort their fears. Slowly, without realizing it, your band is developing what future scientists will call theory of mind, the ability to recognize the inner lives of others. It feels natural to you, but it is shaping your brain into something new. The pressure never lets up. For 117,000 years, your lineage lives like this, balanced on the edge of oblivion, pressed by hunger, drought, disease, and disaster. Most species that fall so far do not return. They vanish into silence, leaving only fossils. But you are different. You hold on generation after generation through sheer adaptability, cooperation, and endurance. And then slowly, the earth shifts again. The rains return, not everywhere, not all at once, but enough to matter. Rivers begin to flow again in some places. Grasslands stretch wider. Herds of animals reappear tentative, at first, then stronger. The silence of the nights grows less absolute. You hear life again, faint, but undeniable. For the first time in countless generations, survival feels less like a constant battle and more like a possibility. This change is invisible to you in the moment. You don't know that the climate cycle itself is easing, that the worst of the mid Pleistocene transition is passing. You only know that your people breathe easier, that children survive more often, that feasts are not as rare as before. You don't know that your population is beginning to grow, climbing out of the bottleneck that almost ended you. You simply live unaware that your persistence has opened the door to a future you cannot imagine. Future scientists will look back and marvel at this. They will see how your numbers swelled again around 813,000 years ago, how humanity's story divided into three great branches: the Neanderthals in Europe, the Denisovans in Asia, and the modern humans who remained in Africa. They will note the timing, the way fire use increased dramatically, the way tools became more sophisticated, the way culture began to flourish. They will understand that the bottleneck was not just survival, it was transformation. But you sitting by your fire cannot see that far. You only know the relief of water on your tongue after months of thirst. You only know the joy of children laughing because their stomachs are full. You only know the comfort of seeing herds move again across the horizon. For the first time in hundreds of lifetimes, you dare to hope. Hope doesn't erase memory, though. You carry the scars of near extinction in your bones and blood. You carry the fused chromosome that marks your lineage. You carry the loss of genetic diversity that still makes your descendants vulnerable to disease. You carry the instinct to cooperate, to teach, to share, born from a time when selfishness meant death. These scars will never fade. They will shape your kind forever. And so, as the land recovers, you recover with it. The bottleneck loosens, but its lessons remain. Your species has been forged in fire, drought, and hunger. You are no longer simply surviving. You are becoming. You live in an age when each sunrise feels uncertain. Even when the climate begins to ease slightly, the scars of drought and hunger remain. Your band has memories of lean seasons that lasted longer than anyone thought possible. Stories passed through the firelight, years when no rain fell, when rivers vanished into sand, when whole families lay down, and never rose again. These memories are warnings etched into every decision you make. When you find food now, you never take it for granted. A single carcass can mean survival for weeks, so you preserve every scrap meat roasted, hides scraped, and stretched bones cracked open for marrow. Nothing is wasted. Even the smell of roasting flesh carries meaning. It is the smell of endurance, of another day claimed from the jaws of extinction. Future scientists will look at this period and see the collapse in genetic diversity, the fossil gap, the loss of animals. They will calculate the staggering odds against your survival. But you don't think in probabilities. You think in footsteps in mouthfuls in nights endured. You only know that every breath is contested by the world around you, and every victory is temporary. The land itself feels changed. You look across plains where nothing grows, where dust devils swirl like ghosts. Some days, wind carries fine particles that sting your eyes, coat your skin, choke your lungs. You cough and press forward, because stopping is not an option. Stopping means falling behind the group, and falling behind means death. It is in these conditions that your instincts sharpen. You learn to notice what others might ignore: the faint dampness of soil, the call of birds that only nest near water, the way certain plants curve toward the hidden springs. You don't call it science, but it is observation and deduction. It is pattern recognition, refined by desperation. These skills will one day evolve into the problem-solving abilities that define humanity. But for you, they are simply the difference between life and death. The toll of scarcity is written on your body. Children grow slowly, their limbs thin, their bellies swollen from malnutrition. Adults age quickly, worn by constant hunger and travel. Few live long lives. Most die young, some from disease, some from accidents, many from sheer exhaustion. And yet you continue. Even as death surrounds you, life refuses to vanish entirely. Babies are still born, their cries soft against the emptiness. Each one feels like a fragile spark in the dark, a reminder that humanity has not ended. At night, lying near the fire, you sometimes wonder what it means to endure like this. You don't think in terms of future billions, but you feel the weight of survival pressing on your chest. Your group is small, fragile, and yet, against all odds, still breathing. Hope exists not as a word, but as the fact that you wake again tomorrow. Scientists in the future will recognize this period as a crucible. They will call it the mid-Pleistocene transition, a time when Earth's climate swung violently, testing every species. Many failed. Countless animals disappeared, unable to adapt to the swings between flood and famine. Your kind should have been among them, and yet you endured. This endurance shaped you into something different, more adaptable, more cooperative, more intelligent. The silence of vanished species still haunts you. You walk across land littered with bones, reminders of what once was. Sometimes you find skeletons of antelopes or elephants, creatures too massive to survive the relentless drought. Predators, too, are absent, their tracks missing from the dust. Once their absence would have brought relief. Now it brings unease. Without them, the balance feels broken. Without them, your survival seems even more precarious, as if the world itself is unraveling. In truth, it was unraveling. Your population fell to fewer than 1,300. Each life carried the weight of the species. You were living inside an evolutionary bottleneck, a tunnel so narrow it seemed impossible to emerge from. But within that tunnel, something profound was happening. The pressure selected you ruthlessly, stripping away weakness, amplifying resilience. Those who adapted passed on their genes. Those who didn't left no trace. Slowly, painfully, your kind was forged anew. When rain finally returned with more regularity, you felt it not as triumph, but as relief. Rivers flowed again. Animals reappeared. Plants grew lush once more. For the first time in thousands of lifetimes, your children had a chance to grow strong, your bands a chance to expand. You didn't know that this marked the end of the bottleneck. You didn't know that humanity's numbers would climb again, that from your fragile survival would come billions. You only knew that tonight, as you drank deeply from a flowing stream, the world felt less hostile. And even in this fragile recovery, you carried the lessons of hardship. You carried the fused chromosome that spread through your lineage. You carried the instinct to cooperate, to share, to teach relentlessly. You carried the scars of near extinction in your DNA and in your memories. These scars would shape everything that came after your health, your culture, your intelligence, even your vulnerabilities. The climate crisis had nearly erased you. Instead, it remade you. You don't see it, but the history of your survival is etched deep inside your body, hidden within every cell, written in the twisted spirals of DNA, is the story of the bottleneck. The world has shrunk you to almost nothing, but in that emptiness, something extraordinary happens. Two chromosomes once separate merge into one. You had carried 48 chromosomes, just like chimpanzees and gorillas still do. But in this desperate age, a rare accident takes place. Two strands fuse, forming what will one day be called chromosome 2. You don't know it, but this tiny change spreads through your small population like fire through dry grass. In a world of billions, such a mutation might vanish unnoticed. But in a population of barely 1,000, it takes root and becomes universal within a few generations. Every human alive today, including you, carries this fused chromosome. Future scientists will be able to point to the exact site of the fusion. They will trace the scars where two ancient chromosomes joined together, evidence as clear as a fingerprint. To them, it will look like forensic proof from the most important crime scene in human history. To you, it is invisible, yet it defines you all the same. What does this mean for you, wandering across the barren land, clinging to survival? It means you are no longer the same as those who came before. That chromosome carries genes near the fusion site that affect brain development. Some researchers will argue that this accident may have nudged your mind toward greater complexity. Perhaps it sharpened your ability to cooperate, to plan, to imagine. Perhaps it laid the groundwork for the intelligence that will one day shape art, science, and language. You feel it not as destiny, but as instinct. Around the fire, you notice that your kin remember details with startling clarity. They invent new ways to chip stone to preserve food, to track animals. They teach more carefully, communicate more deliberately. You can't see the difference in your chromosomes, but you live the consequences in every act of survival. Yet the bottleneck does not leave only gifts, it leaves scars. By cutting your population to so few, it slashes away your genetic diversity. Future geneticists will estimate that you lost around 65% of your variation. Imagine it two-thirds of the possibilities erased in a blink of evolutionary time. Compared to other primates, you are dangerously uniform. Chimpanzees across Africa, scattered into small bands, still carry more genetic variety than the entire human species combined. You live with the consequences daily. Inbreeding becomes unavoidable. Children are born with weaknesses, with frailties that reduce their chances of survival. Some die before walking. Others suffer in silence, their bodies too fragile for the harsh world. You grieve, but you continue because you must. You don't have the words mutation load or recessive disorder, but you know the reality. Too many children fail to thrive, and every loss tears your fragile numbers thinner. The survivors, however, carry the traits that make endurance possible. Year after year, the pressure weeds out what cannot survive and amplifies what can. You see it in the way your people adapt faster, think more cleverly, share more willingly. Survival is no longer just about strength or speed. It is about cooperation, teaching foresight. Those who embody these traits live long enough to pass them on. Those who do not vanish, but the cost remains. The loss of diversity leaves you vulnerable in ways you cannot yet see. Future humans will inherit immune systems weaker than they should be. Diseases that would have been minor irritants to more diverse species will fell entire populations. Genetic disorders will persist at higher rates, locked into your lineage, because there were too few of you to purge them. These weaknesses are the shadows of the bottleneck scars that even modern medicine cannot entirely erase. Still, the paradox is striking. In your fragility lies your strength. The very pressure that nearly killed you also shaped you. The fusion of chromosomes, the sharpening of minds, the refinement of cooperation, all of these arise because you were so few. You are both broken and remade. At night, lying close to the fire, you hear whispers passed from parent to child, elder to youth. They are not just stories, they are lessons encoded in memory. This root must be roasted. This bird calls near water. This path leads to shade. Each whisper is survival, but each whisper also strengthens the neural networks in your brain, honing the instinct to teach and to learn. The bottleneck hasn't just shaped your body, it has reshaped your mind. If you could see yourself from the outside, you would realize how extraordinary you are. You are not just one survivor among many. You are one of the rarest beings in history, a human standing in the shadow of extinction, carrying forward the traits that will one day define billions. Every breath you take, every lesson you teach every child who survives because of your care is part of an unbroken chain stretching into the future. The world has pressed you to the edge, but in pressing it has sculpted you into the ancestor of all who will come after. You don't see the numbers, but you feel the consequences. When children are born, you notice the patterns, some strong, some weak, some never surviving past a few weeks. Every loss cuts deeply because there are so few of you to begin with. Each infant is a gamble against extinction. You can't calculate odds, but you live inside them every day. This is why your people cling to teaching and memory. A weak child might not survive, but if they do, their knowledge could save the group. You see elders who walk with limps, who can no longer hunt, still treated with reverence, not because of sentiment, but because their memories hold maps of streams, recipes for roots, warnings about seasons. In a world with so little diversity, knowledge becomes as important as strength. The bottleneck reshapes how you think about kinship. With so few individuals, everyone is connected, everyone is precious. Inbreeding is unavoidable, and you know the risks, even if you don't name them. Sometimes, cousins must partner with cousin siblings, with distant relatives. It brings defects, yes, but it also brings continuity. Survival demands compromises that would seem unthinkable in abundance. Future humans will carry these compromises forward. They will wonder why certain diseases persist, why humanity's immune system seems weaker than that of other primates. They will puzzle over why humans are so genetically uniform, why one person's os nay looks so much like another's compared to animals with smaller ranges. The answer is you, your survival, your bottleneck, your loss of diversity. You don't know it, but every breath you take is shaping the vulnerabilities of future billions. And yet there is something remarkable here too. In this crucible, evolution runs faster. Traits that help sharp memory, social cooperation, tool innovation spread swiftly because your group is so small. Those who can't adapt vanish, leaving no descendants. Those who can thrive become the ancestors of all who follow. In this way, the bottleneck doesn't just weaken you, it also strengthens the core traits that make you human. You sense it in the way your band communicates. Gestures grow more elaborate, sounds more nuanced. You develop shared signals to warn of predators, to point toward water, to describe food. It isn't full language yet, but it is more than what came before. You are shaping the roots of something profound, and you don't even know it. At night, sitting in the glow of fire, you look at the faces around you. Faces, lean eyes, sharp skin, cracked by sun and wind. These are the carriers of your future, the holders of the fused chromosome, the bearers of fragile genetic code. You don't realize it, but you are the template of humanity. Every person who comes after will carry your scars, your strengths, your adaptations. The bottleneck has reduced you, broken you, but also defined you. You are the 280, and the world's future runs through your veins. You don't carry scrolls or books, but your DNA is a record written silently into every cell. The fused chromosome is only the beginning. Within your narrow population, the reduced genetic variety has lasting consequences. Think of it this way. In a larger population, harmful mutations remain hidden, diluted by diversity. But in your world, every mutation is magnified. If a child is born with a weakness, it can sweep through the group in just a few generations. You see it in bent spines, in malformed limbs, in children who cannot walk or speak. These are the silent costs of survival. In another world, they might have been balanced out. In your world, they are constant reminders of how thin the margin is between existence and extinction. Future scientists will look at this period and call it a genetic bottleneck. They will say it stripped humanity of diversity, leaving scars that remain even hundreds of thousands of years later. They will point out how vulnerable you became to disease, how many immune system variants were lost. They will explain why humans today are unusually susceptible to epidemics, why entire populations fall to illnesses that other primates might shrug off. And all of it will trace back to you walking across this barren landscape, carrying fragile code inside you. You don't know these terms, but you feel the weight. A cough that spreads through camp can kill half the group. A fever can sweep away the old and the young alike. When you lose them, you don't just lose bodies, you lose memories, skills, survival strategies. Each death is like a page torn from the only book your people have, the living knowledge of how to endure. And yet, there are benefits hidden in the suffering. Because your numbers are so small, beneficial traits spread quickly too. The ability to make sharper tools, to communicate more effectively, to cooperate with others. These traits are selected again and again. Those who master them leave more children. Those who fail vanish. Over time, this relentless filter sharpens your mind. It may even be why your brain begins to grow. Fossils from after the bottleneck show cranial capacity larger than those from before. Perhaps it was the chromosome fusion, perhaps the environment, perhaps both. Whatever the reason, you and your kin are slowly becoming creatures with minds, unlike anything the earth has seen before. Not just survivors, but thinkers. At the fire, you notice it most clearly. When one person discovers how to prepare a toxic plant, everyone else copies it. When someone refines a tool, others learn the method. Ideas spread faster than genes, shaping not just your body, but your culture. This cultural evolution is as important as the biological one. It allows your small bands to adapt in ways that sheer instinct never could. But you are not free of cost. The weaknesses of reduced diversity persist. Future humans will inherit them in subtle ways. Genetic disorders like Huntington's disease, sickle cell anemia, and cystic fibrosis will continue to appear legacies of this ancient scarcity. Some of them might even carry hidden benefits traits that protect against malaria or adaptations to certain diets. But the price is heavy, and it will echo across millennia. You feel it in the fragility of your children. You feel it when disease spreads too easily. You feel it when you realize that one bad season can undo decades of survival. Still, you endure. You endure because cooperation compensates for weakness. You endure because intelligence grows where diversity shrinks. You endure because though your DNA is scarred, your spirit adapts. This paradox becomes the foundation of humanity. You are weaker, yet stronger. Fragile, yet resilient. Uniform, yet endlessly inventive. Future scientists will marvel at how your bottleneck didn't just nearly erase you, it defined you. They will see the chromosome fusion as a signature of survival, the loss of diversity as both curse and catalyst. They will argue that the very traits that allowed you to endure the ability to share, to teach, to innovate, were carved into you by necessity, and you sitting in the glow of a dwindling fire don't know any of that. You only know the weight of survival pressing on you and the faces of your kin depending on you. But without realizing it, you are writing the future of the species in every breath, every lesson, every child that lives another day. The bottleneck has shaped not just your body, but your destiny. It has made you who you are and who all of us will be. You sit beside the fire and think about the fragility of your people. Every cough, every injury, every birth feels magnified when your numbers are so few. In a band of 30 or 40, a single death is not just a tragedy, it is a fracture in the chain that holds the species together. The truth is written in your body, though you don't know it. Your DNA carries the memory of near extinction. Imagine how scientists in the far future will look at you. They will see that your entire species lost most of its genetic variety in this bottleneck. They will calculate how 6% of your diversity vanished, leaving scars that never healed. They will wonder how you survived at all when most species at such low numbers fade into nothing. But you did not fade. Instead, you became something new. Your weakness became a paradoxical strength. With less diversity, traits that improved survival spread faster. If someone in your group discovered a new way to prepare food or had a brain wired for sharper memory, those advantages could ripple through the population in a handful of generations. You lived in an evolutionary pressure cooker where every idea and every mutation was tested immediately against the harshness of the world. The fused chromosome inside you is the clearest marker of this transformation. Scientists will later marvel at its scars, at the exact spot where two ancient chromosomes joined. They will point to the genes near the fusion site that influence brain development, and they will suggest that this accident may have nudged humanity toward greater intelligence. To them, it will be data. To you, it is instinct. The way your group remembers. Better teaches better, cooperates better than before. You feel this change in your bones. When you share food, when you teach children how to strike stone against stone, when you tell them which root to roast and which to avoid, you are doing more than keeping them alive. You are reinforcing the very instincts that will define the future. You are practicing what future generations will call culture, the ability to pass knowledge beyond yourself, to extend memory beyond a single life. Still, the costs are heavy. You notice that sickness spreads more easily than it should. One person catches a fever, and soon half the group is weak. You cannot know that your reduced diversity has weakened your immune system, but you live the reality every time a cough silences the campfire. You don't know that this vulnerability will echo forward into billions of descendants, leaving modern humans unusually prone to epidemics. You only know the dread that settles over you when children cry with fever. Some traits persist that seem like curses. A child is born with twisted limbs and cannot walk, another with clouded eyes. In a larger, healthier population, such mutations might have disappeared. In your world, they remain woven into the fragile thread of humanity. Future scientists will trace disorders like sickle cell anemia and Huntington's disease back to this time, to the bottleneck that locked both strengths and weaknesses into your DNA. But there are hidden blessings too. Some mutations that seem harmful carry advantages in certain environments. The sickle-shaped blood cells that cause suffering in some descendants will also protect others against malaria. Other traits that spread during this era will later help humans digest starches, tolerate high altitudes, or resist poisons. Your bottleneck is not just a wound, it is also an engine of adaptation. Each evening, as the fire crackles and shadows dance, you sense that you are different from the animals around you. You are not stronger than lions, nor faster than antelope, but you are more cooperative, more imaginative, more able to bend the world to your needs. The bottleneck did not just strip you down, it forced you to sharpen what remained until it cut like a blade. Future scientists will call this process intensified selection. They will say that during these 117,000 years, the traits that define humanity were refined with relentless pressure. Social intelligence, adaptability, creativity. You didn't choose it. You didn't even notice it. You only lived it one hard season at a time. And so you endure. You endure with chromosomes scarred by fusion with immune systems, weakened by lost diversity, with minds sharpened by necessity. You are fragile, but you are also unstoppable. Every generation that survives makes the next one slightly better prepared. The lessons accumulate, the instincts deepen, the minds grow keener. You don't realize it, but you are becoming the ancestors not just of one lineage, but of all who will follow. From you will come Neanderthals, Denisovans, and modern humans. From you will come the thinkers, builders, dreamers of the future. And every one of them will carry your scars and your strengths in their blood. The bottleneck was not the end of humanity, it was its transformation. You rise each morning carrying invisible baggage, the legacy of the bottleneck encoded inside you. You don't think about chromosomes or diversity, but your life is shaped by them nonetheless. Every sickness, every weakness, every surprising strength is the echo of decisions made not by choice, but by survival. If you could look into your own blood, you would see the signature of near extinction. You would see that chromosome 2 fused together from what once were two separate strands. You would see the scars of mutations that spread quickly because your group was so small. You would see the narrowing of possibilities, the 65 of genetic variation that was erased never to return. This is why, even in ages to come, humans will be more vulnerable to disease than they should be. It is why entire populations will fall to plagues that exploit their similarity. It is why disorders that other species might weed out will linger stubbornly in the human line. The bottleneck is not a story of triumph alone. It is also a warning, a reminder of how fragile your species truly is. And yet there is another side to this inheritance. The very pressure that nearly erased you also refined you. It sharpened cooperation into instinct, teaching into compulsion, memory into survival. It laid the groundwork for intelligence, for language, for culture. Without the bottleneck, perhaps you would have remained clever apes scattered across forests and grasslands. With it, you became something more, creatures forged in crisis, capable of reshaping the world. When scientists in the future look back, they will marvel at how improbable your survival was. They will say that humanity should not have made it, that the extinction vortex should have swallowed you. But then they will look at the evidence, the fused chromosome, the uniformity of DNA, the scars of lost diversity, and they will understand. Humanity did not simply survive the bottleneck. Humanity was created by it. You huddled by the fire, whispering lessons to your children, are part of that creation. You don't know that billions will one day carry your legacy. You don't know that cities will rise, that languages will flourish, that machines will cross skies and oceans. You only know that you survived another day, another night, another season. And perhaps that is enough, because survival in your time is victory. Survival is what ensured that your story did not end in silence. Survival is what allowed your fragile DNA to become the blueprint of an entire species. You are not just living through history, you are history. You are the 1 to 80. And because you endured, the human story continues. You live in a body that carries scars you cannot see. On the outside, you feel toughened by the sun, scarred by stone and fire. But inside, fragility lurks. Every cough, every fever, every festering wound feels heavier when your numbers are so few. Illness is not just an inconvenience, it is a threat to the entire survival of your people. You don't know the term immune system, but you feel its weakness. When someone in your band falls ill, it spreads quickly. A fever grips one child, then another, then half the camp. Sometimes they recover, sometimes they don't. You don't understand why it seems so easy for sickness to travel among you, but the truth is simple. You are too similar. The bottleneck has stripped away your genetic defenses, leaving you vulnerable. Future scientists will see this clearly. They will compare human DNA to that of chimpanzees and marvel at how uniform you are. They will note that diversity is a shield. Different genes protect against different diseases. Without it, pathogens exploit you easily. What you experience as coughing, fits wasted, bodies, sudden deaths, is the echo of a lost variety you never knew you needed. You try to fight back in the only ways you can. Fire becomes a kind of medicine. You cook food to drive away sickness hidden in meat. You boil water when possible, though often there is none to spare. Smoke drives away insects that spread disease. Heat cauterizes wounds, burning out rot at the cost of searing pain. Crude, but sometimes it works. Other times, nothing works. A cut from a sharp stone festers and swells. A toothache grows into an infection that kills. A child drinks bad water and wastes away within days. There are no herbs you trust completely, no charms that guarantee safety. You try what you can, chewing bitter leaves, pressing clay to wounds, chanting around the fire. But the truth is clear. Your defenses are weak. You see it in birth as well. Many pregnancies end before life begins. Infants are born too frail to breathe, or with twisted limbs that make survival impossible. Inbreeding, though you don't name it, is unavoidable. With only 280 of you scattered across Africa, everyone is kin. Cousins pair with cousins, siblings with distant relatives. Some unions bring healthy children, others bring only grief. And yet you persist, because enough children survive, enough adults remain strong enough. Memories are passed on. Each survivor becomes a thread in the fragile rope of your existence. You tie those threads together with cooperation, with relentless teaching, with shared care for the weak. In a world where death feels constant, survival is communal. Future scientists will say this is why humans became so obsessed with healing, with medicine, with rituals around sickness. They will say that your ancient weakness gave rise to a cultural determination to fight back, to cure what nature could not. They will argue that the instinct to care for the sick, even when it risked spreading disease, was born here in this crucible of fragility. You feel it in the way your band refuses to abandon the ill, even when a fever burns, even when a wound stinks of infection, you carry them. You keep them close to the fire. You feed them what little food they can stomach. You whisper lessons to them in case tomorrow never comes. It is costly, yes, but it is also necessary. Each life carries too much knowledge to waste. At night, lying beside the fire, you scratch at your skin and notice the constant irritation. Parasites live with you, always lice in your hair, fleas in your hides, worms in your gut. They are part of existence, unwelcome but familiar. Sometimes you scratch until you bleed only to find more crawling the next day. Cleanliness is a dream you cannot afford. Water is for drinking, not washing. Soap is unknown. You live in a body that is never free of pests, but even this suffering teaches you. You learn to groom one another, picking lice from hair-removing parasites as an act of care. These moments strengthen bonds, reinforce trust. Create comfort in the middle of misery. What begins as necessity evolves into ritual, into affection, into a pattern of cooperation that will carry forward into the distant future. The bottleneck presses against you in every sickness, every parasite, every crooked birth. Yet in pressing, it shapes you. You become not only survivors, but caregivers, not only sufferers, but teachers. You carry weaknesses that will haunt future generations, but also strengths born from enduring them. You don't know it, but when billions walk the earth one day, they will still carry your fragility, diseases that persist, immune systems too weak, genetic disorders that refuse to vanish. But they will also carry your resilience, your instinct to fight back, your refusal to abandon each other. Those instincts are your greatest inheritance. You wake to the sound of someone coughing again. It rattles deep in their chest, wet and heavy, and you feel the dread ripple silently through the group. A cough is never just a cough here. It can be the beginning of death that spreads from one body to the next. You've seen it before. A single illness can take down hunters, children, even the strongest among you. There is no word for contagion, but you understand it instinctively. You see how sleeping too close to the sick makes you sick as well. You notice how sharing a water source with the fevered can bring fever to you. And yet, you have no real way to prevent it. You still drink, you still sit close, you still tend to the ill. Survival demands care, even when care is dangerous. Wounds are just as treacherous. A scrape from stone, a bite from insect, a cut while shaping tools, any of them can rot. You've watched a small injury swell into something grotesque, skin hot to the touch, pus oozing until the person grows weak and dies. Infection is a shadow that follows every action. Fire helps sometimes searing flesh to burn away rot, but the pain is unbearable and the outcome uncertain. Your body itches constantly. Lice cling to your hair, fleas bite at your ankles, ticks bury into your skin. At night, you scratch until you bleed. Everyone does. Parasites are part of life, a constant torment that never leaves. When your band grooms one another, picking out lice and crushing them between fingernails, it feels almost like affection. This is how you find comfort through shared suffering, through small victories against endless irritation. And still, you adapt. You learn to live with weakness, to manage it, to keep moving. You dig herbs from the ground, chew bitter leaves, crush roots into pastes. Sometimes it eases pain. Sometimes it does nothing. The knowledge of which plants help and which kill becomes sacred, passed from elder to youth with grave seriousness. You cannot afford mistakes. Future scientists will look back and see the genetic scars behind all this suffering. They will understand that your immune system is weak because your diversity was stripped away. They will trace disorders that persist in modern humans to this age of desperation. But you do not see science. You only see the daily struggle against invisible enemies inside your own bodies. And yet, you persist. You rise each morning, despite sickness. You walk despite parasites. You share food, despite risk. You are fragile, but you refuse to fall. This stubbornness, this refusal to yield, is what carries humanity forward. You live in a world where your body is both your greatest tool and your greatest weakness. Every day it is tested by the environment, the burning sun, the bitter cold, the dry winds. But more than that, it is tested from within. Illness, frailty, and hidden genetic flaws stalk you in ways you cannot name. You only feel their weight in the losses around the fire. You remember the infant who never learned to cross her limbs, too twisted to carry her weight. You remember the boy who grew strong until one day he simply collapsed his body, betraying him with no warning. These moments leave the band stunned into silence. You don't know the words mutation or recessive disorder, but you know the patterns. Some children are born whole, some are not, and the reasons are invisible. Still, you can't turn away from them. Even the weakest are carried as long as possible, given food, given care. Sometimes they live longer than expected, long enough to share a fragment of knowledge or comfort. Sometimes they die quickly, their small bodies buried under stones. Each loss is more than grief. Each one narrows the fragile thread of survival that ties you to the future. Disease is harder still. Fevers sweep through camp like invisible hunters. One day a child coughs. The next half the group lies weak and sweating. You do what you can, feeding them water, fanning them with branches, pressing cool clay to their skin. Sometimes the sickness passes, leaving survivors scarred but alive. Other times it burns through until there is no one left to care for the last. Till we fall. Infections terrify you most. A cut from stone or bone can kill as surely as a predator's teeth. You have seen hunters return triumphant with meat, only to die weeks later when their wounds rot. You burn flesh with fire, hoping the pain will drive out the sickness. Sometimes it works, leaving ugly scars, but saving lives. Other times, nothing helps. The smell of rot fills the camp, and everyone waits for the end. Parasites never leave you. Worms twist inside your gut, leaching strength from every meal. Your stomach swells, your energy drains, and you wonder if hunger or parasites are killing you faster. Lice infest your hair until you pick them raw. Fleas bite constantly, leaving your skin full of sores. Grooming becomes ritual. One person crouching behind another, searching carefully, crushing pests between nails. It is tedious, endless, but it is also bonding. In grooming, you find a kind of intimacy, a reminder that survival is shared. Cleanliness is nearly impossible. Water is too precious to waste on washing. You smell of smoke, sweat, and animal hides. Your teeth ache and rot, gums bleeding, breath sour. Sometimes a tooth loosens and falls, leaving you unable to chew. Infections follow, sometimes fatal. There is no cure. You endure as long as you can, until even chewing roots becomes agony. Future humans will look back and wonder how you lived at all. They will see that your reduced genetic diversity left you vulnerable to diseases modern people still struggle with. They will trace weaknesses in the immune system, the persistence of disorders, the spread of parasites, all back to this bottleneck. They will realize that the fragility they carry is your inheritance. And yet, they will also see something else, the strength that emerged from weakness. Because you were fragile, you became cooperative. Because you were sickly, you became healers in the only ways you knew. Because you were vulnerable, you learned to care for one another instead of abandoning the weak. At the fire, you see this every night. Someone coughs, and another offers water. Someone scratches at lice, and another helps comb them out. Someone burns with fever, and others sit awake feeding them, whispering comfort. It is costly, but it binds you. Each act of care strengthens the group. Each kindness makes survival possible. This instinct will echo into the far future. Humans will become a species obsessed with medicine, with hygiene, with rituals of healing. They will build temples to gods of health, mix herbs into potions, invent tools to cut into flesh and stitch it closed. They will study invisible enemies with microscopes, build hospitals, discover vaccines. All of it will be the continuation of what you began, not with knowledge, but with instinct, born from the bottleneck. The bottleneck carved your DNA, but it also carved your culture. It taught you that survival isn't about the strongest individual, but about the strength of the group. It taught you that sickness can only be endured together, never alone. It taught you that caring for the weak is not a burden, but an investment in survival. And so, even as you scratch at bites, boil bitter herbs, and burn away rot with fire, you carry something more powerful than medicine. You carry the conviction that life is worth preserving, even when it is fragile. That instinct will carry humanity farther than any cure. You wake each morning already carrying the weight of sickness in your body. Your joints ache from endless walking. Your skin itches with bites. Your stomach twists from parasites. You do not think of yourself as ill. You think of yourself as alive because in your world, to be alive is to carry pain. The children suffer most. You see them thin and restless bellies swollen with worms, eyes wide from hunger. Some survive long enough to grow into hunters or gatherers, but many do not. Every death is a blow to your band, but you keep going. You have no choice. Survival means accepting grief as a companion. Your people know rituals for care, though they are simple. A child with fever is fanned by branches, kept in shade, fed, water drop by drop. A wound is pressed with heated stones, the flesh burned in hope of killing the rot. Herbs are chewed into poultices, applied to swellings, sometimes easing pain, sometimes doing nothing at all. You test plants carefully, watching for signs of relief or danger. Over generations, this trial and error becomes tradition. Future scientists will see the seeds of medicine here. They will say that the instinct to heal began in these desperate times when every small effort might save one more life. They will note how caring for the sick created knowledge networks teaching children which herbs soothed and which killed. They will argue that empathy itself, the ability to feel another's pain and respond, was sharpened by this crucible. You don't know these words, but you live the reality every time you sit awake through the night with a fevered companion. Hygiene is nearly impossible. Your hands are never truly clean. Blood ash, soil, and sweat mark you constantly. The hides you wear crawl with fleas. Your hair tangles with lice. You try to pick them out, and in doing so, you strengthen bonds with those around you. Grooming becomes more than pest control. It becomes intimacy, care, love expressed through fingertips, crushing lice between nails. There is no bathing. Water is too precious. At best, you rinse your mouth with a handful from a stream. Your teeth rot slowly. Pain builds until chewing is agony. Some die not from hunger itself, but from the inability to chew food they can find. You hear the moans of those who waste away from nothing more than bad teeth. In this world, death is never far. Sometimes it comes suddenly in the jaws of a predator. More often, it comes quietly through infection, fever, or frailty. You watch people slip away in their sleep, their bodies too weak to fight any longer. Each passing feels heavier because there are so few of you. Each loss is like cutting a thread from a fraying rope. Yet you keep weaving, you keep teaching, you keep enduring. Your body is weaker than it should be because your diversity has been stripped away. But your mind is stronger than it must be because survival demands it. You learn to predict when illness might strike. You learn to ration food for the weak, even at the cost of your own hunger. You learn to carry one another, not just physically, but emotionally. In this way, disease shapes not only your body, but your culture. Future humans will still carry these scars. They will wonder why entire populations fall to epidemics so easily, why genetic disorders linger, why their immune systems feel fragile compared to animals. They will not always realize that the answer lies with you. They will not always understand that their weaknesses were born in your struggle, but they will also inherit your strengths, the instincts of care teaching and cooperation that emerged precisely because you were so vulnerable. Every night, as the firelight flickers, you feel both the burden and the gift of this inheritance. You know you are fragile, but you also know you are together, and together you endure. You lie awake some nights, listening to the coughs, the scratching of nails against flea bites, the soft groans of those in pain. Darkness feels heavy, filled with the knowledge that tomorrow might claim another life. And yet, within that fear, you also feel a strange determination. The fire beside you crackles softly, casting orange light on weary faces. These faces are more than companions. They are the only link to tomorrow. You know your body is fragile. Infection, parasites, malnutrition, crooked births, these are your constant enemies. But fragility has also forced you to invent something stronger: compassion. You care because you must. You share because no one survives alone. You tend to the weak because abandoning them would weaken you all. In every act of care, you turn vulnerability into resilience. Future scientists will one day marvel at this. They will say that your instinct to cooperate and to heal gave rise to entire systems of medicine. They will point out that your struggles with parasites and infection shaped humanity's obsession with hygiene. They will argue that the very idea of society, people supporting each other beyond immediate family, was born here, in the long nights of sickness and survival. Still, the scars remain. Your descendants will inherit the diseases you could not escape. They will inherit immune systems weakened by lack of diversity. They will carry disorders locked into your DNA by chance and necessity. Every epidemic they face will be a reminder of your bottleneck, but they will also inherit your endurance. They will inherit your instinct to band together, to sit by the sick, to search for cures. They will inherit your relentless creativity, the drive to turn bitter plants into medicine, fire into protection, grooming into affection. The weaknesses written in your chromosomes are matched by the strengths written in your culture. As you close your eyes, you feel the ache in your body, the parasites crawling in your hair, the fever heat of someone lying beside you. It would be easy to despair, yet you don't. You have survived another day, and tomorrow you will rise again. Fragile, sickly, imperfect, but alive. And in this age of near extinction, to be alive at all is victory. When billions of your descendants walk the earth one day, they will still carry your fragility. They will still scratch at parasites, still fall to fevers, still fear infection. But they will also carry your strength, the resilience forged in the bottleneck, the instinct to endure no matter the cost. You are fragile. You are scarred. And yet, you endure. That endurance is your gift to the future. You grow used to pain, but never comfortable with it. Every day, your body reminds you of its limits: aching teeth, swollen joints, rashes that never fully heal. Yet it is not only the body that suffers. The mind bears its own scars. You wake in the night to the sound of a child struggling to breathe, and fear coils in your stomach. You wonder if tomorrow the fire will burn for one fewer soul. Illness shapes your emotions as much as it shapes your body. When someone coughs too long or grows thin too quickly, you see the dread in everyone's eyes. Hope flickers, but it is fragile. Still, you cling to it. You have no other choice. You create small rituals to hold despair at bay, humming while you work, touching the sick gently on the forehead, whispering words you don't fully understand. These gestures do not cure, but they comfort. Comfort is sometimes the only medicine you have. Parasites test your patience daily. Fleas bite until your ankles bleed, lice crawl until your scalp burns. But grooming becomes more than pest control. It is a ritual of closeness. You sit in pairs or circles, fingers searching hair and skin, laughter sometimes breaking the silence when a louse is caught and crushed. These moments weave bonds tighter than words. They are the beginnings of social fabric, the understanding that to survive, you must care for each other. Cleanliness itself feels like a dream. Water is too precious to waste on washing, yet you try when rivers run fuller. You splash your face scrub at your arms. Let children play briefly before thirst reminds you that the water must be soaked. For a short while, you feel lighter, almost renewed. But dust soon returns. Smoke clings to your skin, and the crawling of insects resumes. Death is constant, yet never ordinary. You notice that when someone dies from sickness, the group treats it differently than death, by predator or accident. There is a kind of mystery in it, as if the invisible has claimed them. Sometimes you cover the body with stones, sometimes with earth, sometimes you simply move camp and leave it behind. But always you mark the loss with silence, with bowed heads, with whispers. In these gestures are the first seeds of ritual, the first steps toward what will one day become religion. Future scientists will look back and see that these instincts were born here in your fragility. They will argue that the experience of disease and death forced you to imagine forces beyond your control. Why does one child survive fever while another dies? Why does a wound heal in one man and rot in another? You cannot explain it, so you give it meaning. You whisper to the fire, to the night sky, to the spirits of those who left. You invent stories to soothe fear, to explain suffering, to keep hope alive. This too is a legacy of the bottleneck. Weakness made you seek meaning, and meaning gave you resilience. Hope itself became a survival tool. As you scratch at bites, tend to fevers, and burn wounds with fire, you are not only fighting sickness, you are shaping the way your kind will face suffering forever. You are creating traditions of care, rituals, of comfort, beliefs that life is worth preserving even when fragile. You are laying the first stones of the path that will lead to shamans, healers, priests, and doctors. The bottleneck stripped your diversity, but it gave you something else: the instinct to endure together. It wrote fragility into your DNA, but also compassion into your culture. Tomorrow you will wake again with bites on your skin and hunger in your belly. Someone will cough, someone will weaken, someone may die. And still you will light the fire, share food, care for the ill. That is who you are. That is why your species will survive. And as night falls with shadows flickering across weary faces, you feel something stir inside you, a sense that your suffering has meaning, that your endurance is not in vain. It is the faint beginning of belief, a thread that will lead directly into the next chapter of your story, the rise of faith, ritual, and society. You sit by the fire as night falls flames, snapping in the dry air, shadows leaping across faces. The day's struggles have left everyone exhausted, but the fire always calls you together. Around its glow, silence slowly gives way to whispers, to gestures, to stories. This is more than rest. It is connection. In your world, survival depends on cooperation. Alone, you would starve or fall to predators. Together, you endure. And around the fire, you learn how to be together. You share food, meat from a rare hunt, roots dug from the soil grubs, roasted crisp. You share warmth, pressing close against the night's chill. You share memories where the river still flows, which plants heal, which trails are safe. Memory becomes tradition, and tradition becomes law. But something else stirs here too. You watch the flames twist upward, sparks vanishing into the dark sky, and you wonder. You wonder why some survive fever while others do not. You wonder why the rains fail, why the animals disappear, why lightning splits the heavens. You have no words for it, but you feel it. There is power beyond your control, hidden forces shaping your fragile existence. This is the seed of belief. When someone dies, you do not simply leave them. You mark the moment with silence, with bowed heads, sometimes with stones piled gently over the body. You may hum softly, or press a hand to the still chest, or whisper to the fire. These gestures are not planned, but they carry meaning. They ease grief. They bind the living together, and slowly they become ritual. Future scientists will look back and argue that this is where religion begins, not in temples, not in scriptures, but here in the simple acts of a desperate people facing the unknown. They will say that the bottleneck, by pressing you so close to extinction, forced you to seek meaning in suffering. They will see that your rituals, however small, were survival tools as vital as fire and water. You also learn to shape society around these rituals. Elders become revered not only for their memories, but for their connection to mystery. They know which plants to use, which caves to avoid, when to move camp. Their knowledge feels more than practical, it feels sacred. When an elder speaks, you listen. When they perform gestures over the sick, you believe it might help. In this way, authority is born rooted in both wisdom and faith. Around the fire, gestures turn into patterns. Patterns turn into expectations. Share food or risk anger. Care for the weak or shame will fall on you. Respect the elders or be cast aside. These are not laws written in stone, but they are rules that bind the band together. Without them, you would fracture. With them, you remain whole. In this crucible, society takes shape. The stories you tell also evolve. At first, they are memories, where to find water, how to avoid danger. But soon they become more than instructions. They become tales that explain why the world is the way it is. A hunter might describe thunder as the voice of something greater. A mother might soothe her child by saying ancestors watch from the stars. You don't know it, But you are inventing mythology, and in these myths, you find strength. Believing that death is not the end makes loss bearable. Believing that storms are messages gives chaos meaning. Believing that ancestors linger gives you comfort in the dark. These beliefs bind you as much as food or fire. Future humans will inherit this instinct. They will build temples, write scriptures, raise monuments. They will argue about gods, spirits, and the nature of the soul. But all of it will trace back here to you, sitting by a fire, whispering into the night, because silence is unbearable. Your society is fragile, but it is real. You share, you care, you believe. And in those acts, you lay the foundation for everything to come. You notice that children listen more intently when the stories drift beyond memory into mystery. If an elder says, "We went east and found water that is useful," but if the elder says, "The sky punished those who went east without respect, so we must sing before traveling," the children's eyes widen, their minds absorb not just fact, but feeling. In this way, knowledge and belief fuse together. Lessons gain power when they are wrapped in wonder. Sometimes you see small performances emerge. A hunter who returns from near death acts out his escape by roaring like a lion, stomping like thunder, mimicking the strike of lightning. The group laughs, but they also remember. Later, the gestures are repeated not just as entertainment, but as warnings. Slowly, performance becomes ritual. Fire itself feels alive to you. Its crackle, its unpredictable dance, the way it devours wood and breathes smoke into the sky, it demands attention. You feed it, guard it, speak to it, as though it listens. When someone dies, you sometimes place objects into the flames, a piece of hide, a tool, even food. You don't know why, only that it feels right. Perhaps the fire carries these gifts into the unseen. Perhaps it links the living to whatever waits beyond. The dark terrifies you, but also inspires you. Looking up, you see stars scattered across the blackness, sharp and endless. Sometimes they move streaking briefly. Sometimes the moon swells full and bright. Sometimes it fades. You don't have explanations, but you feel the rhythms. You imagine stories to make sense of them, ancestors, watching spirits, traveling signs from forces greater than yourself. These stories comfort you when the night feels too vast. Future scientists will argue that these moments mark the dawn of symbolic thinking. They will say that when you linked fire to spirits or stars to ancestors, you crossed a threshold beyond instinct. You began to create meaning from the meaningless. You began to build culture from imagination. And imagination is survival too. Believing that ancestors watch over you gives you courage to face hunger. Believing that rituals protect the sick gives you strength to endure fever. Believing that storms have purpose makes chaos less terrifying. These beliefs may not cure disease or bring rain, but they steady your heart. A steady heart is often the difference between despair and persistence. Around the fire, you are not only a band of survivors, you are a community bound by shared rules and shared dreams. You begin to expect generosity, to value loyalty, to punish betrayal. These expectations are not laws written on stone, but they are the foundation of society. Without them, your group would splinter. With them, you remain whole. You notice how the firelight transforms faces. Shadows exaggerate features, making eyes glow and hands look larger than life. Children stare entranced. as elders weave stories with gestures and sounds. These performances are not only for amusement, they encode lessons. Do not drink from the stagnant pool becomes a tale about a spirit that lives in still water. Do not wander alone at night becomes a warning about creatures that hunt in darkness. Wrapped in fear and wonder, these teachings are remembered more vividly than simple instructions ever could be. The band begins to expect such performances. After a hunt, after a storm, after a death, someone steps forward to act out what happened, shaping memory into story. Others join, adding sounds, repeating movements, reinforcing the rhythm. Laughter erupts, or silence falls heavy, depending on the tale. In these moments, you feel the pull of something beyond survival, the creation of shared meaning. You also begin to sense invisible boundaries forming. Who eats first? Who speaks most often? Who sits closest to the fire? These patterns are noticed and respected. Elders hold special weight not only for their knowledge, but for the aura of mystery around them. When they hum over the sick or place hands on wounds, others watch with reverence. The gestures may not heal, but belief itself carries power. The sick feel cared for, and sometimes they recover. That is enough to keep the rituals alive. Over time, certain people become known for their connection to the unseen. Perhaps it is the elder who dreams vividly and predicts rain. Perhaps it is the woman whose chants calm a fever. Perhaps it is the hunter who survived a lightning strike. These individuals are treated differently. They are sought for advice, given respect, allowed to guide decisions. Without intending it, you are inventing the role of healer, shaman leader. Future anthropologists will call this the birth of social hierarchy, the first steps toward organized religion. They will note how fragile bands like yours depended on belief to maintain unity. They will argue that the bottleneck did not only sharpen your body and mind, it also sharpened your culture. Without belief, fear would fracture you. With belief, you remain whole. Rituals grow slowly but surely. Before moving camp, someone sprinkles ash into the wind, whispering for safe passage. Before a hunt, spears are tapped together in rhythm, a shared sound to summon courage. When someone dies, stones are peeled carefully, sometimes decorated with ochre or carved marks. You don't fully understand why, but you feel the weight of these actions. They are not just gestures, they are bonds tying the living to each other and to the dead. At night, when stars glitter above you, find yourself staring upward longer than before. You wonder if the ancestors live there, shining down watching. The thought comforts you, softens. Grief makes loss bearable. You begin to tell stories of journeys after death, of spirits walking across the sky. Children listen with wide eyes, and in believing they find courage. Belief also shapes morality. You begin to act not only out of necessity, but out of expectation. If someone hoards food, the group frowns. If someone abandons the weak, whispers follow them. These judgments gain strength when tied to unseen forces. The spirits will punish greed, or the ancestors will bless generosity. In this way, morality takes root, growing from survival into meaning. Future humans will carry these instincts into every society they build. They will pray, sacrifice, legislate, punish, and celebrate, all under the banner of beliefs first whispered in your age. They will argue about gods and spirits, build temples, and fight wars in their names. But the seed of it all is here, a small band, huddled by a fire, terrified of the dark, whispering stories to explain the unexplainable. You don't think of yourself as inventing religion. You think of yourself as enduring another night. Yet the rituals you perform, the rules you enforce, the stories you believe, these are the beginnings of something vast. They are the glue holding your fragile society together, the invisible shield against despair. And as the flames die low and embers glow faintly, you realize that you are not only surviving, you are building the first society, the first faith, the first culture of humanity. You wake before dawn and hear murmurs around the fire. The elders are speaking quietly, voices low and rhythmic, almost like chanting. Children stir and sit up wide-eyed, as if the sound itself holds power. You don't understand all of it, but you feel the weight. These are not just words. They are something more, something meant to keep fear at bay. As the sky lightens, you see hunters painting lines of red ochre on their arms, pressing handprints onto stone. They believe it will bring strength or protection or luck. You join them, not because you are certain, but because the ritual feels necessary. To refuse would invite unease. Ritual is no longer just expression, it is obligation. The stories told by the fire begin to change too. They are no longer only about where to find water or how to avoid predators. They now carry explanations for why the world behaves as it does. A storm becomes the anger of unseen spirits. A successful hunt becomes a gift from ancestors. A drought becomes punishment for breaking rules. These explanations calm the unknown even if they cannot change it. You feel the power of these beliefs in moments of despair. When a child dies, you whisper that their spirit has joined the stars. When lightning splits the sky, you say it is a sign of guidance. When hunger gnaws you, promise that sharing will bring blessing. These words give shape to chaos, turning suffering into meaning, and meaning gives you strength to rise again tomorrow. Future scientists will say that in this era, humanity crossed a threshold. You are no longer reacting only to the present, you are imagining unseen forces, weaving cause and effect into story. This capacity for symbolic thought was as important as fire or tools. It bound you together, gave you courage, and laid the foundation for culture itself. Hierarchy begins to emerge around belief. Elders, already respected for memory, gain authority as keepers of ritual. Their gestures, their chants, their decisions carry weight beyond practicality. If they say a hunt must wait until a ritual is done, you wait. If they say an illness is caused by angered spirits, you listen. This is not obedience alone. It is survival through consensus, guided by faith. Even the way you share food becomes ritualized. Before eating, some bands hum softly or toss scraps into the fire as offerings. Before leaving camp, you might mark the ground with stones or ashes. Each act feels small, but together they shape your world. They remind you that survival is not just physical, it is spiritual, communal, unseen. The more fragile your existence, the stronger these rituals become. In times of drought, you sing louder. In times of sickness, you chant longer. The actions themselves may not bring rain or healing, but they bring unity. Unity is survival. At night, lying on the ground, you look at the stars and think of those you've lost. You imagine them watching, guiding, protecting. The thought warms you more than the fire. Belief doesn't feed your stomach, but it feeds your spirit. And sometimes spirit is what keeps you walking. Future humans will look back and see this as the dawn of religion. They will argue about what came first, language fire or faith. But they will agree on one point, that without belief, your fragile bands might have broken apart. Faith gave you cohesion when hunger and fear could have scattered you. Faith turned despair into hope weakness, into resilience. And so, as your band hums quietly into the night, you realize you are not only surviving, you are imagining, you are creating, you are laying the foundation for societies, for temples, for gods not yet born. You gather with your band as twilight deepens. The fire glows red, casting long shadows across the clearing. Tonight feels different. An elder has died, and everyone senses the weight. The body lies near the fire, wrapped in hides. No one eats. No one speaks loudly. The silence itself is ritual. At last, an older woman begins to hum. Others join low and trembling. At first, then louder, weaving a sound that feels almost like speech. You don't have words for prayer, but this is close. The hum rises and falls, like breath, like wind, like the rhythm of life itself. Children press close to their mothers, eyes wide, as the body is covered with stones. A few objects, tools, a shell, a scrap of hide are placed on top. You don't know why you do this, only that it feels right. Perhaps the elder will need these things elsewhere. Perhaps it shows respect. Perhaps it keeps the memory alive. This act is more than grief. It is a statement. It says the dead still matter, that bonds do not end with breath. It says that life has meaning beyond the moment. You believe even faintly that something of the elder remains. Whether in stars and wind or in fire, you cannot say, but belief comforts you. Future archaeologists will uncover graves like this, marked by stones and objects, and call them the earliest evidence of ritual burial. They will see the ochre stains, the careful placement of bodies, the offerings left behind. They will recognize what you feel tonight, that death is not only an end, but a mystery demanding meaning. Rituals like these also shape behavior among the living. If the dead are honored, then the living must act in ways worthy of remembrance. Generosity, cooperation, respect all gain weight when tied to the idea of ancestors watching. A selfish act is no longer just dangerous, it is shameful, punishable not only by the group, but by unseen forces. In this way, morality grows teeth. Your band also discovers rhythm together. You clap stones, stamp feet, hum in unison. At first, it is play, but soon it becomes custom. Rhythm steadies fear, sharpens focus, strengthens unity. Hunters stamp together before leaving, syncing their steps with imagined power. Mothers rock infants with songs soothing both child and parent. Music, however crude, becomes another kind of glue. Around the fire, you see hierarchies form more clearly. Elders lead rituals, but others rise too. Those with strong voices, with confident gestures, with courage to claim connection to the unseen. They become the first shamans, healers, guides. Their influence is fragile but growing. When they speak, you listen. When they perform gestures before a hunt, you feel braver. Their power is belief, and belief is survival. Future scientists We'll argue whether this is true religion or proto-religion, whether it deserves the title of faith. But for you, it is simply life. You cannot face sickness, death, and chaos without stories to hold on to. You cannot face hunger without hope that sharing will bring blessing. You cannot face loss without believing that ancestors remain near. The rituals may not bring rain cure disease or banish predators, but they bring something else, unity. And unity more than strength is what keeps you alive. You sit by the fire and watch the sparks rise into the sky. Each one flares, dances, and disappears, yet somehow you feel they do not vanish. You imagine them joining the stars, just as you imagine your dead elders shining above. This belief does not feed you or shield you from predators, but it softens the emptiness. It makes you feel less alone in a world that often seems indifferent. The children copy your gestures. When you sprinkle ash into the wind, they mimic you. When you hum over the fire, they hum too. They don't ask why it feels natural. In their imitation, you see the strength of culture. Belief once imagined does not fade. It is carried forward to taught without effort embedded in daily life. You notice that rituals bring calm. When hunters tap their spears in rhythm, fear lessens. When mothers sing over the sick, the camp grows quiet. When elders hum during burial, grief feels lighter. These actions do not change the world outside, but they change the world within. They shape emotions, steady the spirit, give endurance where none should remain. Future scientists will call this the rise of symbolic thought. They will say you turned survival into meaning, chance into destiny, fear into ritual. They will argue that your ability to imagine the unseen, to link sparks to stars, death to ancestors, thunder to spirits, was as revolutionary as fire itself, and they will be right. From these small beginnings, society grows. You now expect rules, share food, respect elders, honor the dead. You now expect rituals, hum before, hunts place stones on graves, chant in times of sickness. These expectations bind you. They are not optional. They are the invisible laws that hold your band together. Hierarchy also strengthens. Shamans gain voices in decisions. Elders hold authority through memory and ritual. Hunters, though skilled, are not rulers. The group values knowledge and belief as much as strength. This balance allows fragile bands to endure. Leadership is shared, diffuse, built on respect rather than dominance. When you look at the faces around you, you realize that survival is no longer just about food and water. It is about connection. You endure because you believe together. You endure because you create stories that turn despair into hope. You endure because you live not only in the present moment, but also in the imagined realm of spirits, ancestors, and forces beyond. Future humans will carry this inheritance into every culture, every temple, every prayer. They will build vast religions, create gods with names and forms, write texts filled with law and promise. But the essence will remain the same as yours, the need to explain suffering, to honor the dead, to bind society with invisible threads of belief. Tonight, as you lie near the fire, you feel the warmth against your skin and the closeness of your people. The stars above watch silently, and you whisper to them as if they listen. Whether or not they do does not matter. What matters is that you believe, and in that belief, fragile as your body may be, you find the strength to face another day. You wake before dawn, the world still cloaked in darkness. The fire has burned low embers, glowing faintly, giving off more smoke than heat. Your eyes blink against the chill, but it isn't the cold that keeps you alert. It is the sound, soft rustling in the grass, too steady to be the wind. You freeze, heart hammering ears, straining. Then you hear it again, a growl, low and deep, vibrating through the earth. You know immediately what it means. Predators are near. Fear is constant in your world. Lions roam the plains, their golden eyes reflecting firelight when they dare to come close. Hyenas cackle in the night, circling camps, testing for weakness. Leopards strike silently, dropping from trees or bursting from grass with terrifying speed. By day, you may not see them, but by night you always feel them. Even when they do not attack, their presence presses on you, a reminder that you are never truly safe. You remember the night a hyena rushed into camp. Its teeth sank into a child before anyone could react. Screams pierced the darkness. Firebrands were thrown. Spears jabbed wildly. The beast fled, but the child was gone. The memory never fades. Even now, when you hear hyenas laugh in the distance, you taste bile in your throat. Danger comes not only from great predators, but from smaller killers too. Venomous snakes slide unseen through tall grass, their strikes faster than thought. Crocodiles lurk in the murky shallows of rivers. You must cross jaws, snapping with crushing force. Even insects carry death. A bite that seems small can swell fester and bring fever that steals life silently. You know none of these by scientific name, but you know their power all too well, and the land itself can betray you. Storms roar suddenly across the plains, thunder shaking the ground, rain turning paths into rivers. Lightning strikes trees and sends flames racing across dry scrubland, choking the air with smoke. Sometimes the earth itself trembles, rocks sliding soil, shifting beneath your feet. You don't know the words earthquake or volcano, but you know what it means to feel the ground shudder like a living thing. The world is not stable. It is alive, and it does not care whether you survive. But perhaps the greatest danger comes not from beast or earth, but from your own kind. Other bands wander this same land, hungry, desperate, searching for water and food. When paths cross, tension sparks instantly. Strangers are not friends. They might steal food, drive you from water, even kill. You watch their movements carefully, the way they grip stones, the way their eyes narrow. A wrong glance can turn a meeting into violence. You've seen it happen. Spears thrown rocks, smashed into skulls, blood-soaking dust. Survival leaves no room for generosity. Future scientists will say this is where your dual nature took root, trusting your own, but fearing outsiders. They will argue that evolution sharpened cooperation within groups and suspicion without. In your world, both are necessary. To trust blindly is death. To fight endlessly is death as well. You must balance between them, walking a line as thin as survival itself. Every step of your life is marked by vigilance. You scan the horizon for movement, listening always for rustles in the grass, wings beating overhead splashes in water. You sleep lightly, waking at the faintest sound. Even children learn early to stay near the fire, to watch where elders point to hush when danger is close. Fear becomes instinct woven into every breath, and yet fear shapes you into something new. You learn strategy. Fire is not only warmth, it is weapon. Flames keep beasts at bay. Smoke hides your scent. Burning branches serve as spears tipped with light. You post watchers through the night, taking turns, so the group never sleeps fully. You sharpen stones with more care, shaping weapons that cut deeper and fly truer. You move in tighter band shoulders, brushing as you walk, because unity itself is defense. Even rituals serve danger. When hunters stamp spears together in rhythm, it is more than ceremony. It is warning to predators. We are strong. We are many. Do not come closer. When the band sings at night, it is not only to soothe children, it is to tell listening ears in the dark that you are awake, alert, ready. You turn fear into signals, survival into culture. Still, nothing removes danger completely. You live knowing that every day could be your last. A lion's charge, a snake's bite, a rival's spear. Death can come in an instant. The knowledge sits heavy on your chest, but it also sharpens your mind. You begin to anticipate rather than react to. Imagine what might happen before it does. In this way, danger teaches foresight, the first flicker of planning that will one day lead your kind to mastery. Your world is not safe. It never will be. But safety is not what shapes you. Danger is. Danger sharpens your eyes, your ears, your memory. Danger binds you closer to your kin because you know survival depends on trust. Danger pushes you to innovate, to invent weapons, to refine fire, to form rituals that unite and protect. You live in a world where safety is an illusion. And yet, precisely because of that, you learn how to endure. By day, the dangers change shape, but never disappear. The open plains stretch endlessly, offering no place to hide. You scan the horizon, and even when it looks empty, you know eyes may be watching from the grass. A sudden silence among birds, a ripple through tall reeds. These are warnings you've learned to trust. Danger is rarely seen before it strikes, so you learn to read its signs in silence. Crossing rivers is the worst. You step into muddy water, your heart pounding as you wade across. The surface looks calm, but every ripple could hide jaws waiting below. More than once you've seen a band member dragged under gone before a scream could escape their lips. Even when you make it across safely, you feel shaken as though the river itself resents your presence. Climbing rocky hills offers little more comfort. The stones shift treacherously, and a single misstep can send you tumbling. Falling means broken bones, and broken bones mean death. There are no splints, no surgeons, no healing beyond what your body can do on its own. So you climb slowly, carefully, knowing that each move is a gamble. The sky itself brings threats. Clouds roll in without warning, bringing downpours that flood the land. Lightning scorches the earth, setting fires that sweep through dry grass. Sometimes ash falls from the sky, blotting the sun, leaving you to wonder if the world is ending. You don't know about volcanoes or tectonic shifts, but you know the terror of a sky that turns against you. And yet these trials sharpen your band into something more than prey. You learn to assign roles, one to keep watch, one to carry fire, one to guard children. Trust grows not from choice, but from necessity. You depend on each other in every moment. If one fails, all may die. But when you succeed together, you feel powerful, stronger than lions, stronger than storms, stronger than fear itself. This is the paradox of your world. Constant danger makes you fragile, but it also makes you resilient. You live with fear every second, Yet that fear owns your senses, forges cooperation, and prepares you for the next test. Without predators, without storms, without rivals, you might have remained ordinary. With them, you are becoming human. You walk across the plain with your band every step carrying tension. The sun beats down, the horizon shimmers, but you pay more attention to the grass swaying nearby. A rustle can mean wind, or it can mean death. You grip your stone-tipped spear tighter, palms slick with sweat. The children walk in the center of the group, protected by hunters on the edges. This formation is not accidental. It is survival learned through blood. The memories are sharp. You remember the time a leopard sprang from above claws, sinking into a young hunter before he even screamed. You remember the way the band scattered in terror only to gather again, trembling when the beast dragged its prey into the shadows. Since then, you walk differently. You watch the trees as much as the ground. You never let your eyes rest for long. Predators are not the only rivals. Other humans are as dangerous as lions. Once your band stumbled upon another group near a watering hole. At first, you watched each other warily, spears raised but unused. Then, someone stepped forward too quickly, and chaos erupted. Stones flew, spears pierced flesh. Blood spilled into the sand. When it ended, bodies lay still, the water stained red. You drank anyway because thirst outweighed horror. From then on, you knew other people are the most unpredictable predators of all. Danger also hides in the smallest things. A child exploring the brush might grab a plant that blisters skin or eats berries that twist the stomach into knots. A small scratch on your foot can swell until you cannot walk, and without walking, you cannot survive. Insects bite, leaving fever that burns until the body cannot rise again. Every choice carries risk. Even drinking water can kill if it is tainted. You learn to live suspiciously, to test, to wait to observe. The weather conspires against you too. Heat can feel like fire pressing down from the skin, draining your strength. You sweat until salt stings your eyes, then collapse if you cannot find shade. Storms turn paths into rivers, and you stumble through mud that swallows feet, dragging you down. At night, the temperature plunges, and without fire, your body shakes until sleep is impossible. You live at the mercy of forces you cannot control, and yet danger is also teacher. You learn to post guards on high rocks, to look for birds circling that may reveal predators or prey. You mark paths with stones to warn of snakes or unstable cliffs. You signal each other with whistles, clicks, and gestures. Out of fear grows communication, and out of communication grows cooperation. These small innovations are seeds that will grow into language, into planning, into culture. Future scientists will look back and say it was danger that forged your mind. They will argue that constant threat forced you to imagine possibilities before they happened. A rustle in the grass became not just sound, but a prediction of a lion. A dark cloud became not just shade, but the promise of rain or lightning. They will call this foresight, abstract thought, the birth of intelligence. For you, it is instinct born of necessity. Around the fire, stories of danger become warnings for tomorrow. Elders act out the way a leopard moves, crouching low shoulders, rolling eyes fixed. Hunters stomp to mimic the charge of a rhino. Mothers hush children with tales of spirits that punish those who wander at night. Fear is woven into narrative, and narrative becomes survival. And slowly, danger binds you more tightly to your kin. Alone, you would not last a day. Together, you face even lions. Together, you cross rivers, endures storms, fight rivals. Together, you create a world where survival feels possible even if safety never comes. You rise each morning knowing the day itself is a risk. The fire has kept predators away through the night, but daylight brings new dangers. Hunger drives you to move, to search, to expose yourself to threats you cannot always see. You grip a sharpened stone in one hand, a branch hardened in flame in the other, and step into the unknown. Crossing open land is always nerve-wracking. Grass sways in the wind, concealing what lies beneath. A rustle makes your stomach clench. A shadow makes you freeze. You know that lions lie in wait, their golden bodies blending with the earth. You know that leopards drop silently from trees. Each step is a gamble, and your body never relaxes. Your senses are tuned to the edge of breaking. Sometimes the danger comes in groups. Hyenas trail you for little hours, yelping, cackling, testing your resolve. You hurl stones, wave burning branches, shout into the air. They retreat, but not far. They circle like thoughts of death, always near, always hungry. You hate the sound of their laughter in the dark. It is the sound of something that knows your weakness. Other times, danger comes from water. You thirst until your throat cracks, then stumble upon a pool at last. Relief floods you, but caution never leaves. You kneel, cup water in your hands, and then you see movement, the ripple of scales, the glint of eyes. Crocodiles lurk silently, patient as stone. More than once you have seen them strike jaws clamping down with a crack like thunder. The victim never rises. You drink quickly, scanning the surface, heart racing, until you retreat. Even plants are treacherous. Some roots nourish, others kill. Some berries soothe hunger, others bring convulsions. You test with care, watching the reactions of birds and animals before you risk a bite. Trial and error has claimed many lives, but over time knowledge grows. Still, every meal carries doubt. You chew slowly, wondering if each swallow is salvation or poison. And then there are the storms. Clouds gather suddenly, the air heavy with electric charge. Lightning splits the sky, striking trees, setting fire to the grass. You run with your band, clutching children, chasing embers to preserve fire while avoiding the blaze. Rain follows in sheets, drenching hides, flooding low ground. You shiver in the mud, praying the storm will pass. When it does, you are left exhausted but alive. Danger is never abstract. It takes names, faces, memories. You remember the hunter dragged beneath water, the child seized by hyenas, the elder bitten by a snake. These memories are carved into you lessons, more enduring than stone. You act differently because of them. You tread lighter. You watch more closely. You teach your children to fear before they even understand why. Future scientists will say that this constant state of alertness rewired your brain. They will call it anticipatory thinking, the ability to imagine danger before it strikes. They will argue that intelligence itself was sharpened by predators and storms. To you, it is not intelligence, it is survival. You picture what might happen because not picturing it is death. Your group survives because you face danger together. Alone, you would not last a day. Together, you form a wall of fire and spears. Together, you shout stomp chant to frighten predators. Together, you mourn the dead and teach the living. Every threat pushes you closer, binding you with bonds stronger than blood. At night, when the stars wheel overhead, you lie awake listening to the sounds of the dark. Every rustle could be wind or death. But you also know that your people lie beside you, that your fire burns, that your voices together are strong. This knowledge steadies you. You sleep lightly, but you sleep. Danger never leaves you. It shapes every breath, every choice, every story told around the fire. And though it terrifies you, it also forges you. Without it, you would be weaker. Because of it, you endure. You huddle close to the fire. As the night deepens, the flame's your only shield. Beyond the circle of light, the world is alive with threat, eyes glinting in the darkness, sounds that keep your muscles tense. The wind carries scents you do not recognize, and every hair on your body rises in warning. Sleep comes in fragments, stolen moments between jolts of fear. You have learned that no place is ever truly safe. Even caves, which seem protective, bring dangers of their own. Darkness conceals snakes, coiled in silence, bats that burst. Suddenly, rocks that collapse without warning. Open ground exposes you to predators. Rivers promise water but threaten death. The truth presses on you daily. Safety is illusion. Danger is the reality of life. Yet danger is also the architect of your resilience. You adapt because you must. Your eyes become sharper in twilight. Your ears more attuned to the faintest rustle. You know how to freeze, how to listen, how to wait. Children mimic these skills before they can even hunt. Fear shapes them as surely as hunger does. Your band has turned danger into ritual. Before hunts, you chant and stamp, uniting hearts and frightening predators. Before sleep, you circle the fire, reinforcing its boundary of light. When lightning splits the sky, you whisper to it as though to appease it. These actions may not change the world outside, but they change the world within. They steady nerves, strengthen bonds, and prepare you to face what comes. Future humans will call these instincts the foundations of culture. They will say that constant exposure to danger forced your kind to cooperate, to innovate, to imagine. They will argue that your intelligence, your language, your rituals were born in firelight and fear, and they will be right. You living it do not see destiny. You only see survival. You only feel the weight of vigilance, the ache of exhaustion, the relief of another dawn. Yet in your struggle lies the blueprint of humanity. Predators taught you foresight. Storms taught you resilience. Rival bands taught you loyalty to your own. Every threat carved strength into your people, strength that will echo through generations. As dawn breaks, you rise once more, scanning the horizon, listening to the wind. The dangers have not vanished. They never will. But you are ready. You walk into the day, not because it is safe, but because you have learned to survive when nothing is. Danger is your constant companion, and in its shadow, you are becoming human. You sink down beside the fire, body heavy, muscles aching. The day has drained everything from you: the hunger, the watchfulness, the endless scanning for danger. Around you, others settle slowly, some rubbing their legs, some staring blankly into the flames. The children whimper with exhaustion, but cling to their mother's sides, afraid to close their eyes. The fire crackles the only sound louder than the night. Beyond its glow, the world is alive with noises that make your heart race. The distant roar of a lion, the eerie laughter of hyenas, the sudden shriek of night birds. Each sound is a reminder that darkness belongs to others, not to you. You sit as close as you can to the flames, your skin prickling from the heat, because even discomfort is safer than the shadows. The embers glow red sparks, drifting upward into the vast sky. You tilt your head back and see the stars scattered above, endless and cold. Some of them move slowly, planets, though you do not know the word. Some streak quickly, meteors, though you call them spirits. You wonder if the dead walk there, if ancestors watch from above. The thought comforts you, making the darkness less empty. Sleep comes in fragments, broken by fear. Your eyelids droop, but each time you begin to drift, a sound jerks you awake again. A branch snapping, a cough, the wind shifting through grass. You clutch your spear tighter, your body tensing, heart thudding. Only when the sounds fade and the fire's warmth seeps into your bones do you relax enough to close your eyes again. Dreams come quickly when you finally let go. They are vivid and strange images of hunts, of storms, of faces long gone. Sometimes they are comforting, sometimes terrifying. You wake with a start, not sure if the growl you heard was in your dream or in the world outside. Others stir too restless their sleep, as fragile as yours. In this world, even rest feels like a battle. And yet, despite the fear, there is comfort here too. You feel the warmth of bodies pressed close, hear the steady breathing of your kin, see the fire glowing against the night. You are not alone. That knowledge steadies you, softens the edges of fear, allows sleep to return. For all its fragility, this is safety, temporary, fragile, but real enough to let you rest. Future humans will look back and say that nights like this shaped the species as much as deeds of hunting and danger. They will argue that sitting by fire, telling stories, clinging together in fear, forged the bonds of family, of culture, of society. They will say that the stars above, seen night after night, sparked the first questions about life and death, about meaning itself, and they will be right. For now, though, you only know that you are alive, and that tomorrow waits with new dangers. You breathe slowly, listening to the fire's hiss, and let yourself drift at last into uneasy sleep. You shift on the hard ground, curling onto your side. The hide beneath you is thin, barely dulling the sharpness of stones and roots. Your body craves softness, but in this world, softness does not exist. You try to still your breathing, to match it with the rhythm of those around you, because their calm steadies your own. The fire pops, sending sparks skyward, and the children gasp before pressing closer to their mothers. You reach out, placing a hand on a small shoulder. The touch is brief but enough. The child relaxes, eyelids fluttering shut. In the silence that follows, you realize these small gestures matter more than weapons. Comfort, reassurance, these too are tools of survival. Beyond the circle of fire, the night presses heavy. A lion roars again closer, this time the sound vibrating through your chest. Everyone stiffens. Spears are gripped tighter, eyes dart toward the darkness. But the lion does not come closer. It knows the fire respects it, or perhaps simply waits. You breathe again, shallow and cautious, until the night grows quiet once more. Slowly your mind drifts to thoughts of tomorrow. Will Will there be food? Will the river be safe? Will storms return? You do not know, and the uncertainty gnaws at you as much as hunger. Yet you also feel a strange certainty that as long as the fire burns and your people remain, you will face whatever comes. This belief is fragile, but it is enough to let you rest. Future humans will write stories of courage, of battles fought and won. But the truth is simpler. Your courage is this: lying down in a dangerous world and closing your eyes anyway, choosing to trust the fire, to trust your kin, to trust that dawn will come. It is a small act, but it is everything. And so, with the fire glowing low and the stars wheeling above you, let your eyes close. Sleep takes you at last, uneasy but real. Another day has ended. Another night has begun. You are alive, and for now that is enough. You wake briefly in the middle of the night, unsure of what stirred you. The fire has burned lower, only a faint glow now. Your eyes strain against the darkness, searching for movement. For a moment, you think you see eyes gleaming from the grass. You grip your spear tightly, heart pounding. Then the eyes vanish, or perhaps they were only sparks drifting from the embers. Either way, your pulse does not slow quickly. Sleep is never solid here. It comes and goes in fragments, always light, always ready to shatter. Your body knows that deep sleep is dangerous. Too deep, and you might not hear the growl, the scream, the rush of feet. That means attack. So you rest halfway, hovering between waking and dreaming. In this state, you are both vulnerable and alert, always ready to spring. Others stir too. You hear the cough of an elder, the quiet shifting of hunters checking the fire. One rises, stirs the ashes, feeds in a stick of wood until the flames flicker again. The light pushes back the dark just enough to ease your breath. You lie down once more, your muscles trembling from the constant tension. Dreams return strange and vivid. You see animals larger than any you've faced, rivers flowing red sky, filled with fire. Perhaps these are only the echoes of fear, but they feel real enough to leave you sweating when you wake. You whisper softly, hoping the spirits that send such visions will turn kinder. The children whimper in their sleep, tossing and turning. Their small hands clutch at their mother's arms. You reach out once more, steadying them, whispering nonsense sounds just to soothe. The night is a trial for everyone, not just for you. Comfort, no matter how small, is survival. Hours pass in this cycle: wake, watch, drift, dream. You measure time by the fire, when the flames are high, when they are low, when only embers remain. You know that as long as the fire lives, so do you. Without it, predators would come. Without it, cold would seep into your bones until even breath froze in your chest. Fire is not just warmth. Fire is life. Future humans will see nights like this as the cradle of civilization. They will say that around these fires, language took root, stories grew, rituals formed. They will argue that the constant dance between fear and comfort shaped the human mind. But you know only the present moment, the endless fight to rest in a world that does not want you to. When your eyes close again, the stars blur above, and you think of the dead. You wonder if they watch from those lights. You whisper to them, asking for protection, asking for dawn. The act brings no answer, but it brings calm. Sometimes calm is enough. You stir again when the wind shifts, carrying with it the scent of dust and something sharper, animal musk. Your grip tightens on the spear, even as your body trembles from exhaustion. Around you, the band is restless. Someone coughs, someone murmurs in a dream, a child whimpers. The night never truly sleeps. You push yourself upright and peer into the dark. The fire is still alive, though thin. Shadows stretch longer, almost menacing, as though the flames themselves are weary. You reach for a branch, place it onto the embers, and watch as sparks leap up. The fire brightens. Relief washes over you. It is not only warmth you feed, but hope. Every flicker of flame feels like a promise. Without it, the predators would advance. Without it, fear would swallow you whole. You glance at the faces of your kin, lit in trembling orange. Their eyes are heavy, their mouths slack with half sleep, but the light touches them all. The fire binds you together, more powerful than any spear. Still, danger never leaves. In the distance, you hear the high-pitched laugh of hyenas. It carries too well too close. You shiver and edge nearer the flames. Others stir listening. The band presses closer, forming a huddled wall of bodies. You feel the brush of shoulders, the warmth of skin. Togetherness is its own shield. Dreams return in snatches. You see the faces of the dead blurred but familiar, hovering at the edge of the firelight. You hear voices you cannot place, whispering from the shadows. You wake with a gasp, convinced someone was calling your name. But when you sit up, there is only the fire, only your people, only the night. Still, the feeling lingers that the unseen world presses close just beyond your reach. Perhaps this is why you begin to whisper to the flames, to the stars, to the dark itself. You ask for safety, for dawn, for life to continue one more day. The words are not language, as the future will know it, but they are intention, belief, yearning. And in uttering them, you feel lighter, less alone. Future humans will look back and call this prayer. They will say that your fear of the night gave birth to religion, that your whispers to unseen forces laid the foundation for gods and rituals. They will argue that imagination, sharpened by danger, turned into faith. For you, it is simpler. You whisper because silence is unbearable. You whisper because hope needs a voice. Hours pass in this half-dreaming state. Firelight rises, falls, then rises again as others tend it. The band dozes and wakes each member carrying part of the watch. Children shift restlessly, but do not wander. Fear keeps them tethered, even in sleep. This pattern, the vigilance, the shared care, the whispered stories, is what keeps you alive. At last you feel your own eyes grow heavy again. The spear is still in your hand, but your grip slackens. The fire glows steady now, and the laughter of hyenas has faded. Your people breathe beside you, close and warm. You let your eyelids fall, surrendering once more to the fragile gift of rest. The night stretches long, endless in its silence, broken only by the crackle of fire and the sighs of the weary. You lie curled on your side, the ground hard beneath you, the sky wide above. The stars glimmer to like countless eyes, and you imagine each one belongs to someone who has gone before. They watch, they guide, they remember. The thought eases your chest, though your body still aches with fear. Beside you, a child stirs and presses close. You feel the small warmth against your arm, fragile and insistent. You shift slightly, letting them nestle into your side. In this gesture is both burden and gift, the knowledge that their survival depends on you, and your survival depends on the meaning they give you. Protecting them gives purpose to your exhaustion. The fire snaps loudly, scattering sparks, and everyone startles awake for a moment. Spears are lifted, eyes search the shadows, hearts pound, but nothing comes. The tension lingers, then fades slowly as embers settle again. This is life now, the rhythm of constant alertness, the balance between rest and readiness. Sleep comes in layers. Sometimes it is shallow, filled with sounds and shadows. Sometimes it is deep enough to dream. In dreams, the world is strange, rivers glowing animals, speaking ancestors walking beside you. You do not understand, but you wake convinced the dreams hold messages. You whisper them to others in the morning, and they nod solemn, as though wisdom hides within. Perhaps it does. Future humans will one day write myths of Koz who speak in dreams, visions that guide entire peoples. They will build temples, carve statues, paint symbols on stone walls. But the seed is here in your restless slumber by the fire. Your dreams become stories, your stories become lessons, and your lessons become belief. The night is not merciful, but it passes. Slowly, the black sky softens, turning gray at the edges. The first hints of dawn creep over the horizon, painting the world in pale light. Birds begin to call cautious, at first, then louder. You open your eyes and feel relief surge through you. You survived another night. The fire has dwindled, but its embers glow enough to ignite new flames. Others stir fully now, stretching sore muscles, murmuring quietly. Children rub their eyes, clutching their mothers. Elders sit stiffly coughing, but alive. The band is smaller than it once was, scarred and weary, but it is still here. You rise to your feet, spear in hand, and breathe in the cool air. The dangers of the night retreat into memory, replaced by the new dangers of day. Hunger waits. Thirst waits. Predators wait. But for this moment, you feel something like triumph. You endured the darkness. You endured fear itself. Future humans will call this resilience. They will study your bones, your genes, your tools, and marvel that you survived it all. They will not hear the roars in the night, or feel the ground tremble beneath you, or smell the fire that kept you alive. But they will carry your legacy, written into their blood, their stories, their societies. For now, you simply step into the dawn, tired, but unbroken. Another day begins, another chance to endure. And as you walk with your band across the awakening plain, you know only this: you are fragile, but you are still here, and being here is everything. And so, as we return from this long journey through time, let your mind rest on that you have walked through a days in the life of your ancient self, awakening to hunger, searching for food, fighting weakness, clinging to fragile health. You faced predators in the grass, storms in the sky, rivals at the river. You carried the weight of fragile genes, of sickness that struck without warning, of fear that never lifted. And yet through it all you endured. You endured because you were not alone. Around the fire you shared food and warmth. You whispered stories into the night, turning fear into meaning loss, into memory mystery, into hope. You looked to the stars and believed that something greater watched over you. In that belief, you found the strength to survive another day, another night. The bottleneck could have ended your story. The world could have silenced your kind forever. But it did not. You endured, fragile but unbroken. And from your endurance came everything: the spark of language, the roots of culture, the birth of belief, the resilience that carried humanity forward. As you drift now into sleep, let yourself feel the weight of that legacy. You are alive because they survived, and every heartbeat, every breath, every dream tonight carries the echo of their struggle. Rest gently, for the story continues tomorrow. Sweet dreams.